Metal shrieked as rain lashed across the exposed beams of Grand Tower. Michael Turner stood rigid against the howling wind, his soaked work shirt clinging to his frame. 30 stories above Pittsburgh, the partially constructed skyscraper swayed slightly in the storm. 20 feet away, Richard Mills leveled a gun with practiced ease, the expensive suit he wore incongruous against the raw construction site. "She trusted you," Richard's voice carried over the rain, a smile playing at his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "But she doesn't know your secret, does she, Turner, about what really happened that night?" Between them, Eleanor Palmer lay crumpled against a stack of building materials, blood from a gash on her forehead, mixing with rainwater. Her designer suit was torn and muddied, but her eyes remained clear, focused on Michael with something between hope and betrayal. Michael glanced down at Eleanor, paint etching deep lines around his eyes. "I can't save her twice." Lightning flashed, illuminating the three figures in stark relief against the stormy sky of Pittsburgh, a tableau of power, desperation, and unspoken truths suspended in a single moment. 8 months earlier, at 5:30 in the morning, Michael Turner's alarm cut through the darkness of his small apartment. He silenced it quickly, careful not to wake 6-year-old Lily sleeping in the room next door. Their morning routine moved like clockwork. He showered, prepared Lily's lunch peanut butter sandwich, with the crusts removed apple slices and a small note with a drawn heart, and gently woke her with a soft pat on her shoulder. "Time to rise and shine sunshine," he whispered, as he did every morning. Lily's room was small but filled with drawings and craft projects they'd made together. College funds weren't an option, but creativity he could give her in abundance. A cardboard rocket ship occupied one corner, its exterior covered in aluminum foil and decorated with buttons salvaged from discarded electronics. A bookshelf, hand-built from reclaimed wood, housed her growing collection of library books and secondhand treasures. By 6:15, they sat at their tiny kitchen table. Michael drank his coffee black while Lily arranged her cereal in patterns before eating it row by row, one of her quirks that had emerged after her mother left 3 years ago. Michael studied his daughter as she ate, her dark hair falling across her forehead in a way that reminded him of Catherine. The thought brought a familiar ache. "Daddy is my special doctor appointment this month?" Lily asked, carefully selecting her next spoonful of cereal. Michael nodded, trying not to let worry show on his face. "Yes, sunshine, next week. Dr. Martinez is going to check your ears again." "Will it hurt like last time?" "She'll be very gentle," he promised, "and afterward maybe we can get ice cream." Lily's face brightened. "With sprinkles?" Double sprinkles. The recurring ear infections had started 6 months ago. What began as occasional discomfort had progressed to something concerning enough that Lily's pediatrician had referred them to a specialist. The words "possible surgical intervention" and "risk of hearing loss" haunted Michael's thoughts, along with the knowledge that their limited insurance would cover only a fraction of the cost. At 30, Michael's hands were calloused from years of hard labor, his dark brown hair perpetually in need of a cut, and the lines around his eyes had deepened since becoming Lily's sole caretaker. Catherine had walked out, claiming she wasn't cut out for motherhood, leaving Michael to navigate parenthood alone. He dropped Lily at Mrs. Gloria Jenkins' apartment downstairs. The elderly woman had become their lifeline after Catherine left. "You look tired, Michael." Mrs. Jenkins noted her eyes, kind but concerned behind thick glasses that magnified her gaze. At 72, Gloria Jenkins carried herself with the dignified posture of someone who had weathered life's storms with grace. The widow of a construction worker herself, she seemed to recognize the weight Michael carried. "Working extra shifts again?" He nodded, "trying to save up for Lily's doctor visit next month. Her ear infection is back." What he didn't mention was the incident yesterday at the Grand Tower construction site. He'd been helping set foundation supports when he noticed something concerning about the material quality. Before he could report it, he'd heard the crash, seen the beam fall. His body had moved before his mind could process what was happening. It wasn't the first time a Turner had acted without thinking. In 1985, his father, Robert Turner, a master carpenter, had pulled two people from a burning building on his way home from work. Like Michael, he had disappeared afterward, refusing recognition. "Turners don't help for applause," his father had told him. "We help because it's right." Gloria's knowing eyes suggested she suspected something. "I saw on the news some big shot CEO got saved at that construction site of yours. Dangerous place, seems like." Michael shrugged noncommittally. "I was working on the west side, didn't see much." Gloria wasn't fooled, but she didn't press. Instead, she squeezed his arm gently. Your father would be proud of the man you've become, Michael, whatever you did or didn't do yesterday. The mention of his father lingered in Michael's mind as he made his way to the Grand Tower site. Robert Turner had been gone for 15 years now, but his principles remained Michael's North Star, especially after Michael's time in the Navy Construction Battalion, the CBs, where he'd served before pursuing his dream of architecture school. The discipline and technical skills had served him well, even if the dream itself had been deferred. As Michael approached the construction site, a flash of memory surfaced his second year at Cornell, presenting his sustainable community housing design to a panel of professors. Exceptional understanding of how spaces affect human connections, they'd said. Then Catherine had called with the news that would change everything. I'm pregnant. Turner, you're on the 10th floor today, and try to keep your head out of the clouds. We need those supports finished by noon. The foreman, Mike Russo, broke through Michael's thoughts as he checked in at the site. Michael nodded, slipping on his hard hat. He'd learned long ago that defending himself used energy he couldn't spare. What no one at the site understood was that Michael had once been on track for much more. 12 years ago, he'd been halfway through architecture school at Cornell, designing buildings rather than just building them. The architecture dreams had folded neatly away, replaced by blueprints for survival. As he worked through the morning, Michael's mind drifted to the woman in the car. He hadn't recognized her as the famous Eleanor Palmer until he saw her face on a newspaper someone had left in the break room. He'd simply seen a human being in danger and acted. The thought of claiming credit or asking for a reward had never crossed his mind. But now, hearing rumors of a substantial reward, Michael felt a momentary temptation. That kind of money could pay for Lily's ear surgery, start a small college fund, maybe even allow him to finish his degree. The temptation faded as quickly as it came. His father's voice echoed in his mind. A man's integrity isn't for sale, son. Besides, Michael had another reason for staying anonymous. He was working without a proper construction license. After his CB service and architecture studies, he should have qualified easily, but a paperwork issue with his military discharge had created complications. Mike Russo had hired him anyway based on his obvious skills and willingness to work hard, but the arrangement wasn't strictly legal. Being thrust into the spotlight could cost him his job. "Hey, Turner," called one of the younger workers during lunch break. "You see that crash yesterday? That was the big boss lady herself. Heard she's offering a reward to find the guy who pulled her out." Michael shrugged, unwrapping his simple sandwich. "Didn't see much. Was working on the west side." He ate quietly, planning the evening ahead. Lily needed help with her reading assignment, and he needed to mend the tear in her favorite stuffed rabbit before she noticed. Such was the rhythm of his day's work. Lily sleep, repeat. It wasn't the life he'd imagined as a young man with an architecture scholarship and dreams of designing sustainable community spaces. But when Lily wrapped her arms around his neck at bedtime and whispered, "You're the best, Daddy," it was enough. Eleanor Palmer sat rigidly in her office chair, her tailored suit hiding the bruises from yesterday's accident. At 42, she had built Palmer Holdings from a small consulting firm into a real estate development powerhouse. The view from her 30th floor office showcased 3 Palmer buildings cutting through the Pittsburgh skyline, with the newest Grand Tower still under construction. The tower represented not just wealth, but her vision of creating spaces where commerce and culture could coexist. She designed it herself, spending nights refining the plans until they achieved the perfect balance of functionality and inspiration. Now, like everything else in her life, it had become a battlefield in her ongoing war with Richard. "Miss Palmer, the board is concerned about your insistence on returning to work so soon after the accident," her assistant, Robert Collins, said as he placed a stack of contracts on her desk. At 58, Robert had been with the company almost from the beginning, one of the few who had stood by her through the bitter divorce and corporate battle with Richard. "The board can direct their concerns to the quarterly profit margins I've delivered," she replied. "What's the status on identifying the construction worker who assisted yesterday?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "Security footage was limited due to the construction barriers. HR is reviewing employee records from the site, but without a clear description." Eleanor finally looked up, her green eyes sharp. "I need a name, Robert. That man saved my life. Palmer Holdings rewards excellence, and what he did was beyond excellent." What she didn't say was how the incident had shaken her. For 8 years since divorcing Richard, she had built walls around herself, literal skyscrapers and figurative barriers that kept everyone at a professional distance. Yesterday, a stranger had broken through both with nothing but his bare hands and immediate concern for another human being. She also didn't mention the missing bracelet, a delicate gold chain with a small emerald that had belonged to her grandmother. It was the only thing she had left from a childhood where material possessions were scarce, but love abundant. Her father, a mechanic who had worked 6 days a week to put her through college, had given it to her when she graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. "To remember where you came from," he'd said. The bracelet had been on her wrist during the accident. Now it was gone, another loss among many. "I want interviews with every worker from that site," she instructed. "Discreetly frame it as a general safety review." After Robert left, Eleanor turned to the window, her reflection ghost-like against the cityscape beyond. The woman staring back at her looked polished, successful, untouchable. But yesterday had proven just how fragile the human body could be, how quickly control could be wrenched away. She wondered what her father would think of her now. James Palmer had been a man who judged people by their character, not their bank accounts. He'd spent 40 years at the same auto shop, taking pride in honest work done well. Eleanor had inherited his work ethic, but somewhere along the way had perhaps lost sight of his values. The thought was uncomfortable. Eleanor Palmer didn't do uncomfortable. She solved problems, created solutions, moved forward. Sentimentality was a luxury she had abandoned long ago, along with a small apartment above her father's garage, where she'd spent hours sketching building designs on the back of old receipts. James had died 5 years ago, never seeing the full extent of Palmer Holdings' success, never walking through the buildings his daughter had created. She sometimes wondered if he would have been proud or concerned about what she'd become. Turning from the window, she picked up the phone. Robert added a cash reward to the search. $20,000 for information leading to identification. If she couldn't appeal to humanity, perhaps capitalism would deliver better results. Over the next week, Eleanor found herself driving by the construction site during lunch breaks and after work. She'd sit in her new company car, watching the workers from a distance. None moved like the man she remembered, with that quiet sureness, that total focus. She tried other approaches, an anonymous employee appreciation event where she could observe the workers up close, a surprise inspection that allowed her to see their faces. She even authorized a generous safety bonus to all site employees, hoping her rescuer might reveal himself when claiming it. Nothing worked. "Maybe he doesn't want to be found," suggested Caroline Weber, her closest friend and legal counsel for Palmer Holdings, over their monthly dinner. "That's absurd," Eleanor countered. "Do you know what I could do for this person? Job advancement, education opportunities, financial security?" "Maybe he doesn't want what you're offering," Carolyn said gently. "Not everyone measures life by the same metrics, Elle." The comment stung because it exposed something Eleanor rarely admitted: her tendency to believe every problem could be solved with the right resource allocation. It was how she'd built her company, her reputation, and her life after Richard had left her for his 24-year-old assistant, claiming Eleanor was too focused on success to remember how to love. "This isn't about metrics," Eleanor insisted, though the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "It's about gratitude, about fairness." Carolyn's skeptical expression said everything. Later that night, Eleanor stood on her penthouse balcony. The lights of Pittsburgh spread before her like a constellation. She'd grown up in one of the city's working-class neighborhoods where her father had repaired cars for people who counted every dollar. Now she lived in the sky, surrounded by luxury, but disconnected from the ground. The realization was unsettling. Eleanor Palmer didn't do unsettled. She did solutions. Saturday morning found Michael at Riverside Park, sitting on a bench while Lily conquered the jungle gym. These weekend outings were sacred to him. No work, no distractions, just time with his daughter. "Daddy, watch this," Lily called, hanging upside down from a bar, her dark braids dangling. "I see you, monkey, be careful," he called back, giving her a thumbs up. He was so focused on Lily that he didn't notice the woman approaching until she spoke. "She's fearless." Michael turned to find Eleanor Palmer standing beside his bench, dressed in casual clothes, jeans, and a simple blouse so unlike her office attire that he almost didn't recognize her. "Ms. Palmer," he said, straightening, "what are you doing here?" She gestured vaguely toward the walking path. "I live about a mile from here. Sometimes I walk through on weekends." Michael nodded but said nothing more, turning his attention back to Lily, who was now attempting to cross the monkey bars. Eleanor hesitated, then sat on the far end of the bench. "It's a beautiful park," she offered. "I don't come often enough." Michael glanced at her but remained silent. His mind raced. Did she recognize him from the accident? Was this a coincidence, or had she somehow tracked him down? "The thing is," she continued, "in my world, everyone always wants something. Every interaction has an agenda." She watched Lily swing from bar to bar. "It gets exhausting." "Sounds like you need better company," Michael commented, not unkindly. Before Eleanor could respond, Lily ran up slightly out of breath. "Daddy, there's an ice cream truck. Can I have one, please?" Michael checked his watch. "Before lunch." "Please." Lily extended the word to at least 4 syllables, clasping her hands dramatically. Michael laughed, a warm sound that surprised Eleanor with its openness. "Okay, sunshine, just a small one." As he reached for his wallet, Lily noticed Eleanor. Unlike many children, she showed no shyness. "Are you Daddy's friend? I'm Lily. I'm 6. "Hello, Lily. I'm Eleanor," she replied. "Yes, I work with your father." Lily's eyes widened. "Do you build big buildings too?" "Something like that," Eleanor said with a small smile. Michael handed Lily a few dollars. "The truck's by the fountain. Get me a strawberry popsicle if they have one." "Okay." As Lily skipped away, an awkward silence fell between the adults. Michael broke it first. "I don't actually work with you. Not directly, anyway." "I know," Eleanor said. "You work at the Grand Tower site." Something in her tone made Michael tense. "Did you need something from me, Miss Palmer?" "Eleanor, please." She watched Lily carefully selecting her ice cream. "She's wonderful." "She's everything," Michael said simply. Lily returned, balancing 3 frozen treats. "I got you a strawberry one. Daddy and I got a vanilla cone for your friend, because everyone likes vanilla, right?" Before either adult could react, Lily had thrust the cone toward Eleanor, her expression expectant. "That's very thoughtful, Lily," Eleanor said, carefully accepting the rapidly melting ice cream. "Thank you." They sat eating their frozen treats, Lily chattering about school, her best friend Zoe, and how she was going to build a rocket ship out of cardboard boxes. Eleanor found herself smiling, genuinely caught up in the child's enthusiasm. "What do you do?" Lily eventually asked Eleanor, vanilla ice cream smudged on her cheek. "I run a company that builds buildings," Eleanor explained, simplifying her role. Lily's eyes widened. "Like the really tall ones downtown? Daddy helped build those. He's the best builder ever. He fixed Mrs. Jenkins' sink and built me a bookshelf for my birthday." Michael looked slightly embarrassed. "Lily." "It's true," Lily insisted. "Daddy can fix anything, except maybe Mommy, but he says some things stay broken, and that's okay." An uncomfortable silence fell. Michael gently wiped Lily's cheek with a napkin. "Sunshine, why don't you try the swings for a bit? Not too high." Once Lily was out of earshot, Michael sighed. "Sorry about that. Kids have no filter." "No, it's refreshing," Eleanor said truthfully. "In my world, everyone has an agenda. Carefully filtered words." She watched Lily pumping her legs on the swing. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Michael replied, his eyes following his daughter. As they prepared to leave the park, Lily turned to Eleanor. "Will you come next Saturday? We're bringing a kite if it's windy." Eleanor hesitated, looking at Michael. He gave a small nod. "I'd like that, Lily," she said. As she walked back to her apartment, Eleanor realized something startling. The persistent knot of tension she carried between her shoulders had loosened just a fraction. For 2 hours, she had thought about nothing except ice cream, sunshine, and the simple joy of a child who saw the world as fundamentally good. 3 weeks after the accident, Eleanor's security team finally made the connection. An employee badge access record showed one worker, Michael Turner, missing from his station for exactly 22 minutes during the time of the accident. Single father, 6 years on site, no disciplinary issues. Robert reported placing the file on Eleanor's desk. Lives in the Riverside Apartments with his daughter. Eleanor opened the file to find a standard employee photo. Michael Turner looked directly at the camera. No smile, no frown, just clear eyes and a face that had weathered more than its share of challenges. A face she now recognized from the park. Eleanor felt a strange mixture of triumph and unease. She had found her rescuer, but their park encounters took on a new dimension. Had he known who she was all along? Was he avoiding the reward for some reason? Most puzzling of all, why did the thought of revealing what she knew fill her with such trepidation? The file contained more information. Before construction, Michael had served in the Navy Construction Battalion. Prior to that, he'd studied architecture at Cornell, but dropped out in his third year. There was a notation about an incomplete military discharge processing that had prevented him from obtaining proper licensing, a technicality that would be simple for someone with Eleanor's connections to resolve. As she flipped through the pages, a small detail caught her eye. Michael's emergency contact, Gloria Jenkins, the downstairs neighbor he'd mentioned. The address, Riverside Apartments, sparked a memory. Palmer Holdings had recently been looking at properties in that area for potential development. In fact, if she remembered correctly, the Riverside complex was on their acquisition shortlist. Eleanor closed the file, her mind racing with possibilities. She had found the man who saved her life. Now she needed to understand why he had walked away. Michael was clearing dinner dishes when a knock came at the apartment door. Lily, already in pajamas, looked up from her coloring book. "Is that Mrs. Jenkins?" "Probably," Michael said, though Gloria rarely visited after 7. "Keep coloring, sunshine, I'll check." Opening the door revealed not Mrs. Jenkins, but Eleanor Palmer, wearing a simple dress that somehow looked more expensive than his entire apartment's contents. "Ms. Palmer," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "This is unexpected." "I'm sorry to intrude," she said. "May I come in for a moment?" Michael hesitated, then stepped aside. Eleanor entered, taking in the small but tidy apartment. Books lined the walls, many on architecture and design, while Lily's artwork decorated every available surface. It was modest but unmistakably a home. "Lily, we have a visitor," Michael called. "You remember Miss Palmer from the park?" Lily bounded over, her face lighting up. "Eleanor, did you come to see my rocket ship? I finished it." "I'd love to see it," Eleanor said with genuine warmth. While Lily retrieved her cardboard creation, Michael turned to Eleanor. "What brings you here?" "I've been looking for you," she said simply. "Or rather, for the man who pulled me from my car 3 weeks ago." Michael's expression remained neutral, but a muscle tightened in his jaw. "You found him, I take it?" "I believe I have." Their eyes met in silent acknowledgement. "Why didn't you come forward?" Before Michael could answer, Lily returned with her rocket, an impressive construction of cardboard, tinfoil, and liberal amounts of glitter. "This is mission control," Lily explained, pointing to a panel of buttons drawn with meticulous care. "And this is where the astronauts sleep." "It's extraordinary," Eleanor said, kneeling to examine the details. "You've thought of everything." "Daddy helped with the cutting," Lily admitted, "but I did all the designing." "She has an architect's eye," Eleanor observed. "Like father, like daughter," Michael said softly. Eleanor looked up sharply, but Michael's attention was on Lily. "Time for bed, sunshine. Go brush your teeth, and I'll be in to read a story in 5 minutes." Once Lily had disappeared into the bathroom, Eleanor stood smoothing her dress. "You were in architecture school." It wasn't a question. Michael knew she'd been investigating him. "Cornell," he confirmed, "a lifetime ago." "What happened?" Michael's expression closed. "Life happened, Miss Palmer. Now, if you've satisfied your curiosity about who pulled you from that car, I have a bedtime story to read." "I came to thank you," Eleanor said, "and to offer you something in return." "I don't want a reward." "Not money," Eleanor clarified. "A real job using your skills and experience. Palmer Holdings needs people who can both design and understand construction." Michael's laugh held no humor. "So now you're saving the rich CEO, rescuing the poor construction worker." The words landed like slaps. Eleanor stiffened. "That's not, isn't it?" Michael challenged quietly. "You investigate me, come to my home unannounced, and offer to elevate me from my humble existence. Did you ever consider I might be content with my life?" Eleanor's cheeks flushed. "I thought, that's the problem," Michael interrupted. "You thought about what I might need without asking. Just like everyone in your world, Miss Palmer. Everything's a transaction." Eleanor's professional mask slipped, genuine hurt flashing across her face. "That wasn't my intention." "What was your intention?" The question hung between them, and Eleanor found herself without a ready answer. Why had she pursued this so relentlessly? Why did it matter so much who had pulled her from that car? "I should go," she said, finally moving toward the door. "I apologize for intruding." Michael's expression softened slightly. Wait, I should apologize too. You came to say thank you, and I've been defensive. Why did you help me that day? The question seemed to surprise her as much as him, as if she hadn't meant to ask it so directly. Michael considered this. Because you were in danger. Because that's what people should do for each other. He paused. Because my daughter is watching everything I do, learning how to be in this world. Eleanor absorbed this, then tried another approach. If not a job, then perhaps something else. A college fund for Lily. Better housing options. Michael shook his head, disappointment crossing his features. You're still not getting it. Turning a basic human response into a transaction. It cheapens it, doesn't it? For perhaps the first time in her professional life, Eleanor Palmer found herself speechless. In her world, everything had a price or a value proposition. The idea that some actions existed outside that framework was foreign to her. I need to read Lily her story, Michael said quietly. She gets anxious if her routine changes. Of course. Eleanor moved to the door but paused with her hand on the knob. Will you still be at the park on Saturday? Michael studied her for a long moment. We'll be there at 10 home. Bring a sweater. It gets windy near the pond. It wasn't forgiveness or even acceptance, but it was something. Eleanor nodded and left the door closing softly behind her. In the elevator, she leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. She had handled that all wrong. Eleanor Palmer, master negotiator, had misread the entire situation. But the most unsettling realization wasn't her tactical error. It was that for the first time in years, she cared about making it right. The next morning, Michael's phone rang as he prepared Lily's lunch. The caller ID showed the construction site office. Turner, he answered, wedging the phone between ear and shoulder as he spread peanut butter on bread. Mike Russo here. Got some interesting news for you. The foreman's voice held an unusual note of respect. Just got a call from Palmer Holdings HR. They want to review your personnel file. Michael froze. My file wipe, didn't say, but here's the kicker. They're reviewing everyone's credentials, looking for workers with untapped potential for advancement. Architecture background was specifically mentioned. The peanut butter knife hovered over the bread. I see. Thing is, Turner, I need to tell him about your licensing situation. With this kind of corporate attention, I can't risk. I understand, Michael cut in. Do what you need to do. After hanging up, Michael stared at the half-made sandwich. Eleanor was still pursuing her agenda despite their conversation. The thought brought equal measures of irritation and a strange warmth he wasn't ready to examine. Later that day, he received a letter from Palmer Holdings, not termination as he'd feared, but an invitation to apply for an expedited licensing program sponsored by the company. No strings attached. The letter finished, no obligation to accept employment afterward. Michael placed the letter on his small kitchen table, uncertain whether to feel grateful or manipulated. Before he could decide, another knock came at his door. This time it was Gloria Jenkins, her expression grave. Michael, did you hear Palmer Holdings bought the Riverside complex? We all got notices this morning. What? Michael took the paper she offered, scanning its contents. Indeed, Palmer Holdings had acquired the property and planned significant renovations and updates. They're saying rent won't change for now. Gloria continued, her voice wavering slightly. But you know how these things go. First comes renovation, then comes market rate adjustments. Michael thought of his neighbors, mostly seniors on fixed incomes, working families, stretching every dollar. The Riverside apartments weren't fancy, but they were stable, a community where people looked out for each other. Don't worry, Gloria, he assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at. I'll find out what's happening. After Gloria left, Michael paced the small apartment, pieces falling into place. Eleanor's visit, the job opportunity, now this purchase, they weren't coincidences. They were moves in a game whose rules he didn't understand. His phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. Saturday, 10:00 a.m. I'll bring coffee. We should talk, Eleanor. Michael stared at the message, emotions warring within him. Part of him wanted to delete it to shield himself and Lily from whatever complicated web Eleanor Palmer was weaving. But another part, the part that still dreamed of designing spaces that changed lives, was curious. What exactly did Eleanor Palmer want from him? The answer, when it came, would change everything. Eleanor's town car pulled up to Riverside Park precisely at 9:55 a.m. on Saturday. She stepped out, coffee carrier in one hand, a manila folder in the other. For a moment, she hesitated, an unfamiliar nervousness fluttering in her stomach. Eleanor Palmer didn't do nervous. She did prepared. She did strategic. She did solutions. Yet here she was, second-guessing herself before a meeting with a construction worker and his 6-year-old daughter. Michael and Lily were already at their usual bench. Lily spotted her first, waving enthusiastically. "Eleanor, we brought the kite." Michael's greeting was more reserved, his eyes watchful. "Good morning." "I brought coffee," Eleanor said, offering the carrier, "and hot chocolate for Lily." "With marshmallows?" Lily asked hopefully. "Extra marshmallows," Eleanor confirmed, earning a delighted smile. As Lily sipped her treat, Eleanor turned to Michael. "You received the notice about Riverside Apartments." "Along with every other tenant," Michael confirmed. "Interesting timing." "It's not what you think," Eleanor began. "What do I think, Miss Palmer?" "That I'm using business to manipulate you," she said bluntly. "That I'm trying to buy your friendship or gratitude." Michael raised an eyebrow but didn't deny it. Eleanor took a deep breath. "The Riverside acquisition was in progress before I knew you lived there. It's part of our affordable housing initiative." She opened the manila folder, revealing architectural renderings. "We're renovating the building, yes, but maintaining it as mixed-income housing. Current tenants will have guaranteed units at their current rates." Michael took the renderings, his professional eye automatically assessing the designs. They were good, thoughtful improvements to the aging structure without sacrificing its character. "And my licensing situation," he asked. "The expedited program, an opportunity, not an obligation," Eleanor said. "You have talent, Michael. Whether you use it at Palmer Holdings or elsewhere is your choice." "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor watched Lily attempting to launch the kite, her little face screwed up in concentration. "Do you know what I thought about trapped in that car? Not my company or my achievements or my bank accounts. I thought about all the things I'd never done, the connections I'd never made." She met his gaze directly. "You saved my life, then disappeared. When I finally found you, you refused any reward, any acknowledgement. You challenged everything I thought I knew about how the world works." "And that interests you?" Michael asked skeptically. "It does," Eleanor admitted. "You and Lily, you measure life differently than I do. I want to understand that." Before Michael could respond, Lily ran over, struggling with her kite. "Daddy, it won't fly." "The wind's not strong enough yet, sunshine," Michael explained, setting aside the renderings. "Can I help?" Eleanor asked, surprising herself. Michael looked at her, really looked at her for perhaps the first time. What he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded. "Show us what you've got, CEO." The three of them spent the next hour attempting to launch the kite, with Eleanor proving surprisingly adept. "My father taught me," she explained as the kite finally caught the wind. "He said it was important to understand how things worked, not just how to pay for them." Watching Eleanor run across the grass, helping Lily guide the kite higher, Michael felt something shift inside him. The woman before him bore little resemblance to the corporate executive who had appeared at his door. Here was someone genuine, someone trying, however imperfectly, to connect. Later, as they sat on the bench watching the kite dance against the blue sky, Lily between them, Michael made a decision. "I'll consider the licensing program," he said quietly. "No promises beyond that." Eleanor nodded, understanding the significance of this small concession. "That's fair." As Lily chatted about the kite's acrobatics, Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression darkening. "Problem?" Michael asked. "Just work," she said, silencing the device. "Nothing that can't wait." But the shadow that crossed her face suggested otherwise. Michael, attuned to reading people, sensed genuine concern beneath her composed exterior. "Lily, why don't you show Eleanor your collection of special rocks?" he suggested, giving Eleanor a moment to compose herself. As Lily eagerly led Eleanor to a nearby tree where she had arranged a series of ordinary pebbles with extraordinary stories, Michael pondered the complex woman who had entered their lives. Eleanor Palmer was clearly fighting her own battles, navigating a world that demanded constant vigilance and control. Yet here she was, kneeling beside his daughter, examining rocks with the solemn attention they deserved. The protective instinct that made him pull her from that crushed car stirred again, though the danger now was less tangible than twisted metal. Something was troubling Eleanor Palmer, something she wasn't sharing. Michael's intuition rarely led him astray, And it was telling him that the story of Eleanor Palmer was far more complicated than he had initially believed. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Palmer Holdings faces financial scrutiny, screamed the Pittsburgh Business Journal headline. Eleanor sat in her office, scrolling through the digital version, her face a careful mask despite being alone. The article cited anonymous sources claiming Palmer Holdings was overextended, that the Grand Tower project was behind schedule, and over budget, that investors were growing nervous. None of it was true. The Grand Tower was on schedule, their finances were solid, but in the world of high finance and development, perception often outweighed reality. Her phone rang. Caroline Weber, legal counsel and friend. "I've seen it," Eleanor said without preamble. "It's a hit job," Caroline replied. "The question is, who's behind it?" Eleanor already knew. Only one person had both the motive and the resources to orchestrate this. Richard, her ex-husband, had been suspiciously quiet since their divorce finalized. Too quiet considering he'd vowed to destroy everything she built after losing control of the company. "We need to respond carefully," Caroline cautioned. "A direct denial looks defensive." "Schedule a press tour of the Grand Tower site," Eleanor decided. "Transparency is our best weapon. And Caroline, find out what Richard's been up to lately." After hanging up, Eleanor turned to the window, her reflection resolute against the cityscape beyond. She'd fought too hard, sacrificed too much to let rumors destroy her life's work. Whatever game Richard was playing, she would win. She always did. Michael's day at the construction site took an unexpected turn when the foreman gathered the crew for an announcement. "Listen up," Mike Russo called. "There's going to be a media tour of the site tomorrow. Big shots from Palmer Holdings news crews, the works." He scanned the assembled workers. "They want to show how well the project's going, so everybody needs to look busy and professional." Murmurs rippled through the group. Construction sites weren't typically showcased mid-project. "Something wrong with the company?" asked one veteran worker. "Above my pay grade," Russo replied with a shrug. "Just do your jobs and try not to swear on camera." As the crew dispersed, Russo pulled Michael aside. "Turner, I got word from upstairs. You're being assigned to a different area tomorrow." Michael frowned. "Why?" "Don't know. Orders came straight from the top." The implications were clear. Eleanor was deliberately keeping him away from the cameras, from any connection to her. After their time in the park, the personal conversations, it stung more than Michael wanted to admit. That evening, as he helped Lily with her homework, his phone buzzed with a text. "Need to speak with you, not about us, about Riverside. Important. Eleanor." Michael stared at the message, torn between irritation and concern. The "not about us" part caught his attention. He wasn't aware there was an us to discuss. After tucking Lily in, he replied, "I'm listening." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Richard Mills is trying to acquire the blocks surrounding Riverside. My ex-husband. He doesn't know I own it yet. It's complicated. Can we talk?" Michael weighed his options. The Riverside purchase still felt manipulative, regardless of Eleanor's explanations. Yet if there was any threat to his neighbors, to Gloria and the other seniors who couldn't afford to relocate. "Tomorrow, 7:00 p.m., Mrs. Jenkins' apartment. She makes a good witness." Eleanor's reply came quickly. "Thank you." Gloria Jenkins' apartment was similar to Michael's in layout, but filled with 60 years of collected memories. Photographs covered nearly every surface: her late husband Frank in his construction uniform, their children and grandchildren, even a few of Lily and Michael. "You sure about this?" Gloria asked as she set out coffee cups. "Business types like her, they don't care about folks like us." "I'm not sure about anything," Michael admitted, "but if someone's threatening Riverside, we should know." A knock came precisely at 7. Eleanor stood in the doorway, dressed more casually than her office attire, but still unmistakably elegant. "Mrs. Jenkins, thank you for allowing me into your home." Gloria's appraising look missed nothing. The designer watched the perfect posture, the careful smile. "Miss Palmer, I understand you own our building now." "I do," Eleanor confirmed, accepting the offered seat. "Which is why I'm here." She opened her tablet, displaying property records. "Richard Mills, through various shell companies, has been quietly acquiring properties surrounding Riverside. My sources indicate he plans to build a luxury high-rise that would effectively wall off this neighborhood from downtown." Michael studied the maps. "He doesn't have Riverside itself, though." "Not yet," Eleanor agreed, "but he's made inquiries through intermediaries. He doesn't know Palmer Holdings is the current owner." "And this matters to you because," Gloria asked bluntly, Eleanor met the older woman's skeptical gaze. Professionally, because Richard would love nothing more than to derail my projects. Personally, she hesitated. Because Riverside matters to Michael and Lily, and somehow they've come to matter to me. The simple honesty of this admission surprised both Gloria and Michael. What's his endgame? Michael asked. Development rights for the entire block, Eleanor explained. If he controls enough surrounding property, he can pressure the city to rezone, force smaller owners to sell. It's predatory development 101. And what's your plan? Gloria pressed. To stop him, Eleanor said simply, but I need information on the ground intelligence about who in the neighborhood has been approached, what offers have been made. Gloria and Michael exchanged glances. The Hendersons on the third floor mentioned someone asking about buying their condo, Gloria offered, and the bodega owner on the corner, his landlord's been trying to break his lease. Eleanor nodded, taking notes. This helps, thank you. What's in it for you? Gloria asked, ever direct. Stopping your ex-husband can't be your only motivation. Eleanor considered this. Riverside is perfectly positioned for workforce housing people who keep the city running but can't afford downtown prices. Palmer Holdings has been developing a mixed-income model that could transform urban housing. So we're your test case. Michael's tone was neutral, but his eyes were watchful. More like the prototype for what housing could be, Eleanor corrected. Sustainable, affordable, dignified. The kind of project that leaves a real legacy. Something in her voice, a hint of genuine passion, made Michael study her more carefully. You actually care about this? I do, Eleanor admitted. My father lived in a neighborhood like this one. Good people who worked hard but could never get ahead because the system was stacked against them. He died thinking I'd forgotten where I came from. The personal revelation hung in the air. Gloria's expression softened slightly. Frank always said you can judge people by how they treat those who can't do anything for them. Your husband sounds like a wise man, Eleanor said. He was. Gloria rose, retrieving a photo album. 40 years in construction, helped build half of downtown. As Gloria showed Eleanor photographs, Michael observed their interaction. Eleanor asked thoughtful questions showing genuine interest in Frank's career and Gloria's life. It wasn't the calculated charm of a businesswoman. It was something more authentic. When Gloria mentioned her arthritis making it difficult to visit her grandchildren in Cleveland, Eleanor didn't offer platitudes. Instead, she asked practical questions about transportation options and accessibility needs. Problem-solving was clearly her default mode. Later, as Eleanor prepared to leave, she turned to Michael. I need to ask you something else. It's about the Grand Tower project, the media tour. You want me out of sight, Michael guessed. Eleanor nodded. There are rumors being spread, false ones, about the project's viability. And you can't risk me being recognized as the man who pulled you from the car, Michael finished. Might raise uncomfortable questions about why you're so interested in a construction worker. I'm sorry, Eleanor said, and she genuinely looked it. It's not that I'm embarrassed, it's just complicated, Michael supplied. I understand business optics, Eleanor. You don't need to explain. Relief flashed across her face. Thank you. After she left, Gloria fixed Michael with a knowing look. That woman's fighting battles you don't even see, Michael. What do you mean? I mean she didn't get where she is by playing nice with the boys' club. And that ex-husband of hers sounds like a real piece of work. Gloria patted his arm. Just be careful. Rich folks' problems have a way of becoming everybody's problems. So, the media tour went smoothly. Eleanor led reporters through the Grand Tower site, confidently addressing questions about timelines and finances. Stock prices stabilized. The rumors for now were contained. What the cameras didn't capture was Eleanor's exhaustion afterward. Back in her office, she slumped in her chair, the professional mask slipping. You handled that perfectly, Robert said, bringing her a cup of tea. The board is pleased. Richard won't stop here, Eleanor warned. This was just the opening move. Robert nodded gravely. Caroline found something. Westland Development, the company, approaching Riverside property owners, Richard's the majority investor, through a series of offshore accounts. Eleanor wasn't surprised. He's trying to box me in, block the Grand Tower project while simultaneously undermining our Riverside plans. It's personal for him, Robert observed. After all these years, it was always personal, Eleanor said quietly. I was just too focused on the business to see it. She thought of Michael and their conversations about measuring life differently. Perhaps she had miscalculated in more ways than one. There's something else, Robert added hesitantly. The man who rescued you, Michael Turner. HR completed their background check for the licensing program. His architecture portfolio is exceptional. Cornell professors still reference his work, but there's an issue with his military discharge, a paperwork error that's prevented him from getting proper licensing. Eleanor frowned. What kind of error? Administrative, nothing dishonorable, but it's created a bureaucratic nightmare that's followed him for years. Another piece of the Michael Turner puzzle clicked into place. His reluctance to come forward after the accident, his wariness about her interest, it made more sense now. Fix it, Eleanor instructed quietly, respectfully. Don't make him feel like a charity case. Robert nodded. Already in progress. After he left, Eleanor turned to the window, watching darkness fall over the city. She thought about Michael, his principles, his dedication to Lily, his quiet dignity despite circumstances that would embitter many. She thought about Gloria Jenkins and her lifetime of memories, vulnerable to displacement by market forces beyond her control. And she thought about her father, who had taught her that success without principles was just organized greed. For the first time in years, Eleanor wondered if she'd been measuring the wrong metrics all along. Saturday at the park brought clear skies and a cool breeze. Michael arrived with Lily to find Eleanor already at their bench, a bakery box beside her. I brought muffins, she said by way of greeting. The bakery near my office makes them fresh. Eleanor, Lily exclaimed, we went to the museum yesterday and saw dinosaur bones, real ones. Real ones, Eleanor asked, matching the child's enthusiasm. As Lily launched into a detailed description of each prehistoric creature, Michael studied Eleanor. She looked tired, faint shadows visible beneath her expertly applied makeup. Yet her attention to Lily was genuine, her questions thoughtful. When Lily ran off to the playground, Eleanor turned to Michael. Thank you for the information about Riverside. It's been helpful. How are you holding up? He asked, surprising them both with the personal question. Eleanor blinked. I'm fine. No, you're not, Michael said quietly, but you're good at making people think you are. For a moment, Eleanor's careful composure wavered. It's been a challenging week. Richard, she nodded. He's always been ruthless in business, but this feels different, more vindictive. What happened between you two? Michael asked. If you don't mind my asking. Eleanor was silent for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. We started Palmer Holdings together, she finally said. I had the vision, he had family connections. For years it worked. I designed and developed projects. He handled the financing and networking. She watched Lily on the swings, her expression distant. Then I discovered he was cutting corners on materials, bribing inspectors, putting profits above safety. We fought about it privately at first, then openly. The board had to choose sides. They chose you, Michael guessed. They chose the better business model, Eleanor corrected. Richard's methods brought short-term gains but long-term liabilities. I proved that ethical development, Boseman, was more profitable over time. She smiled without humor. He never forgave me for that being right and taking his company. The divorce was just collateral damage. Michael absorbed this. And now he's back targeting your projects and the people connected to them. Which now includes Riverside, Eleanor confirmed, includes you and Lily. The protective concern in her voice was unmistakable. Michael felt something shift between them, a new understanding taking shape. We can take care of ourselves, he assured her. We always have. I know you can, Eleanor said, but maybe you shouldn't have to. Not alone. Before Michael could respond, Lily called from the playground. Daddy, Eleanor, watch me go down the big slide. They both turned to wave, momentarily united in their focus on the child. It was, Michael realized, the most natural they'd felt together, this shared attention to someone who needed them both. I have your licensing paperwork, Eleanor said quietly. The military discharge issue has been resolved. You can apply for full credentials whenever you're ready. Michael stiffened. I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to, Eleanor replied. It was a bureaucratic error that should have been fixed years ago. All it took was the right contacts at the Veterans Administration. And Palmer Holdings just happens to have those contacts. I have those contacts, Eleanor corrected. My father served. I support veterans organizations. Michael wanted to be angry, to accuse her of overstepping, of trying to buy his gratitude, but the simple logic of her actions defied easy dismissal. She had seen a problem she could fix and fixed it without fanfare or expectation. "Thank you," he said finally. "That's been hanging over me for a long time." Eleanor nodded, accepting his gratitude without elaboration. It was perhaps the first completely uncomplicated exchange they'd shared. The moment was interrupted by Michael's phone. The screen showed Gloria's name. "Excuse me," he said, answering. "Gloria, what's wrong?" Eleanor watched his expression darken as he listened. "I'll be right there," he said, finally ending the call. "What's happened?" she asked. "Someone broke into Gloria's apartment while she was out," Michael explained, already rising. "Nothing valuable was taken, but her place was searched. She's pretty shaken up." "Let me come with you," Eleanor offered. Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Lily," he called, "we need to go see Mrs. Jenkins. Something's happened at her apartment." As they hurried from the park, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that their separate worlds were colliding in ways neither of them had anticipated. Whatever game Richard Mills was playing, the stakes had just become far more personal. And whatever was developing between him and Eleanor Palmer had just shifted into something neither of them had been looking for. Gloria Jenkins sat rigidly on her sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Two uniformed police officers stood nearby, looking simultaneously sympathetic and bored, clearly categorizing this as a minor break-in in a neighborhood where such things happened. "Nothing seems to be missing, ma'am," one officer was saying as Michael, Eleanor, and Lily entered. "Probably kids looking for cash or electronics." Gloria's relief at seeing them was palpable. "Michael, thank goodness!" "Are you okay?" he asked immediately, sitting beside her. "Just rattled," she admitted. "They went through everything, closets, drawers, even Frank's old papers." Eleanor approached the officers, her posture subtly shifting into what Michael had mentally labeled her CEO stance. Back straight, chin slightly raised, eyes direct. "Has forensics been called?" she asked. The officer blinked clearly, reassessing the situation based on Eleanor's appearance and tone. "Ma'am, for a simple break-in with no major theft." "This wasn't a simple break-in," Eleanor interrupted smoothly. "Mrs. Jenkins is a resident in a building owned by Palmer Holdings. We have reason to believe this may be connected to a larger pattern of harassment related to real estate interests in this neighborhood." She produced a business card. "I'd like forensics called immediately, and I'll need a copy of the full report. Palmer Holdings will cover any additional departmental costs." The officer's demeanor changed instantly. One stepped away to make a call while the other began a more thorough examination of the entry points. Michael shot Eleanor an impressed look. She shrugged slightly, a silent, "This is what I do" gesture. Lily, meanwhile, had appointed herself Gloria's personal comforter, showing her a small stuffed cat she'd brought along. "Mr. Whiskers makes me feel better when I'm scared," she explained solemnly. Gloria managed a smile. "Thank you, sweetheart. That helps." As forensics arrived and began their work, Eleanor drew Michael aside. "This wasn't random," she said quietly. "They were looking for something specific." "Property documents," Michael guessed. "Lease agreements." "Possibly." Eleanor glanced at Gloria, who was now describing the break-in to a detective. "Or information about the other residents. Who might sell, who's vulnerable." Michael's jaw tightened. "Richard." "It fits his pattern," Eleanor confirmed. "Information is leverage in real estate." The grim reality of the situation settled between them. This wasn't just business maneuvering anymore. It was affecting real people, vulnerable people. Gloria could have been hurt or worse. "What's our next move?" Michael asked, not even registering his use of "our." Eleanor noticed but didn't comment. "Security upgrades for the building immediately, and I think it's time I confronted Richard directly." "Is that wise?" "Probably not," she admitted. "But letting him operate in the shadows clearly isn't working." Later, after Gloria had been settled with a new security system and Lily was asleep, Michael stood on his small balcony, staring at the Pittsburgh skyline. The Grand Tower was visible in the distance, illuminated by construction lights. His phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Security team will patrol Riverside tonight. Sleep well." The simple message carried more meaning than its few words suggested. Eleanor was protecting them not just as a business asset, but as people she cared about. Michael's thoughts drifted to the licensing paperwork she'd arranged, to her genuine interest in Lily, to the way she'd taken command of the situation at Gloria's apartment. Eleanor Palmer was complicated, driven, and sometimes overstepping, but her intentions were becoming increasingly clear. She was fighting for something larger than herself, larger even than her company. And somehow Michael and Lily had become part of that fight. The realization should have troubled him more than it did. "He's here," Robert announced, appearing in Eleanor's office doorway. Eleanor closed the folder she'd been reviewing, preliminary designs for the Riverside renovation. "Send him in." Richard Mills entered with the confident stride of a man accustomed to occupying space unapologetically. At 46, he remained handsome in a polished, artificial way. Perfect teeth, perfect suit, tailored to minimize his softening midsection. "Eleanor," he greeted her, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Still working in this glass cage, I see." "Richard," she replied evenly, "I appreciate you agreeing to meet." "How could I refuse? Your message sounded so urgent." He settled into a chair without waiting for an invitation. "Though I'm puzzled why you'd want to discuss Westland development with me. I'm merely an investor." "A controlling investor," Eleanor corrected. "Through a labyrinth of shell companies that took my team 3 days to unravel." Richard's smile tightened. "Always the thorough one." "Let's dispense with the games," Eleanor said. "I know you're targeting the Riverside neighborhood. I know you've been approaching property owners, pressuring tenants, and now apparently resorting to break-ins." "Serious accusations," Richard commented, examining his manicured nails, "especially without evidence." "The police have evidence from Mrs. Jenkins' apartment," Eleanor countered, "and I have documentation of every property Westland has acquired in the area. It's a clear pattern of predatory development." Richard leaned forward, his casual demeanor hardening. "Still playing the righteous crusader, Eleanor. It was tiresome during our marriage, and it's tiresome now. This is business. The strong succeed, the weak get moved aside. Is that what this is about, proving you're strong?" Eleanor kept her voice level, despite her rising anger. "Breaking into an elderly woman's apartment, spreading false rumors about Grand Tower." A flicker of surprise crossed Richard's face. He hadn't expected her to connect those dots. "The market responds to information, Eleanor." "Misinformation," she corrected, "but it stops now." Richard laughed, the sound utterly devoid of humor. "Or what, you'll run to the board again? Cast me as the villain in another corporate morality play?" "No," Eleanor said quietly. "I'll expose every questionable deal Westland has made, every building code violation, every instance of tenant harassment. I have the documentation, Richard. I have the witnesses." His expression darkened. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Eleanor slid a folder across the desk. "This is a sample. Page 3 might particularly interest your investors, the ones who don't know about your history of material substitution." Richard didn't touch the folder. "You always were willing to burn everything down to get your way." "No, Richard. I'm willing to fight for what matters." Eleanor stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Stay away from Riverside. Stay away from Palmer Holdings projects. Find another neighborhood to pillage." Richard rose slowly, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. "You've changed, Eleanor. There was a time when you understood business is just business, nothing personal." "That's where you're wrong," Eleanor replied. "The best business is deeply personal. It's about people, communities, legacy. You never understood that." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Your father really did a number on you with all that working-class hero nonsense. Look where it got him, fixing other people's cars until the day he died." Eleanor's voice turned to ice. "My father died with his integrity intact and people who genuinely mourned him. Will you be able to say the same?" Something dark flashed across Richard's face, a glimpse of the rage he usually kept carefully contained. "This isn't over, Eleanor, not by a long shot." After he left, Eleanor remained standing, adrenaline coursing through her. The confrontation had gone as expected. Richard was predictably arrogant, predictably threatening, but she hadn't anticipated how personally his dismissal of her father would affect her. James Palmer had worked 60-hour weeks at that garage, his hands perpetually stained with engine grease, to give his daughter opportunities he never had. He taught her that a person's word was their bond, that cutting corners cost more in the long run, that how you treated people mattered more than what you achieved. Somewhere along the way, through business school, through building Palmer Holdings, through her marriage to Richard, some of those lessons had faded. Not disappeared, but dimmed beneath the harsh light of corporate success metrics. Now thinking of Gloria Jenkins' frightened face, of Lily's innocent trust, of Michael's principled stance, those early lessons were resurfacing with new clarity. Eleanor picked up her phone and dialed Carolyn. "I need you to expedite the Riverside renovation plans," she said without preamble, and set up a community meeting with all current residents. It's time they knew exactly what we're planning. "Thanks for picking up Lily today," Michael said as he entered Gloria's apartment that evening. "The foreman asked me to stay late to finish a support column." "Happy to help," Gloria replied. "She's been telling me all about her dinosaur book. That child absorbs information like a sponge." Michael smiled, watching Lily carefully color a brontosaurus at Gloria's kitchen table. "She does. Gets that from her mother." Gloria studied him for a moment. "Any particular reason you're still in your work clothes? You usually shower right after your shift." Michael rubbed the back of his neck. "I wanted to check on you first. Make sure you're okay after yesterday." "I'm fine," Gloria assured him. "That fancy security system Miss Palmer installed makes me feel safer than Fort Knox, though I could do without the blinking lights." Michael nodded, then glanced at the stack of boxes in Gloria's living room. "What's all this?" "Frank's old papers," Gloria explained. "After those people went through them, I figured it was time I did the same. See what was so interesting." "Find anything?" "Just memories. Old photos, work records, some letters." She paused. Though there was something odd, Frank kept detailed records of every project he ever worked on: building permits, material lists, inspection certificates. But some of the Palmer projects had gaps. Michael frowned. "What kind of gaps?" "Missing inspection certificates, changed material orders." Gloria shrugged. "Probably nothing. Construction projects change all the time." "May I, Michael gestured to the boxes. "Help yourself. I was planning to toss most of it anyway." Michael began sifting through the papers, his architect's eye picking up patterns that might seem random to others. He paused on a folder labeled "Old Palmer Mechanics, Garage Expansion, 1998. "Palmer Mechanics?" he asked. "James Palmer's garage," Gloria explained. "Eleanor's father. Frank did some work for him years ago, added a second bay to his shop. They became friends." Michael opened the folder, finding photographs of a modest auto repair shop. One showed two men standing proudly in front of the completed expansion, Frank Jenkins and a man who must have been James Palmer, both grinning, arms around each other's shoulders. "They knew each other," Michael murmured, surprised. "Of course," Gloria said. "Pittsburgh's not that big a town, especially in the trades. James was good people. Honest mechanic, fair prices. Frank respected him." Michael studied the photo more closely. In the background, a young woman, maybe 17 or 18, stood in the garage doorway. Her posture was unmistakable, even then. Straight back chin, slightly raised. A teenage Eleanor. "Did you ever meet him, James Palmer?" Gloria nodded. "A few times. He came to dinner once or twice. Talked about his daughter constantly, how smart she was, how she was going to change the world. He was right about that, I suppose." Michael's mind raced with this new information. Eleanor had never mentioned that her father might have known Frank Jenkins. Did she even know? Was this connection mere coincidence or something more? "Did Frank ever work on any Palmer Holdings projects?" he asked. "A few early on," Gloria replied, "before the company got so big. He always said Eleanor was different from most developers, cared about doing things right." She smiled sadly. He would have been disappointed to see how things changed after she married that Richard fellow. Michael continued examining the documents, finding more photos of Frank and James together. Then in a faded envelope, he discovered something unexpected: a photograph of four people at what appeared to be a backyard barbecue. Frank and James were there, but so was another man who looked strikingly familiar. "Is that—" Michael started, then stopped, his heart hammering. Gloria leaned over to look. "Oh, that's your father, Robert. This must have been the summer they all worked on the Miller building downtown. Around 89 or 90, I think." Michael stared at the image of his father, younger than he remembered him, but unmistakable. "My father knew James Palmer. They were friends for a while," Gloria confirmed. "Your dad was the best carpenter Frank ever worked with. James appreciated good craftsmen." She studied Michael's face. "You didn't know?" "No," Michael said softly. "He never mentioned it." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The summer his father had taken him to a garage to meet a good man. Michael had been maybe 5 years old, remembered only the smell of motor oil and a kind man with grease-stained hands who'd given him a soda. "Lily," he called. "Time to go home. Sunshine, say thank you to Mrs. Jenkins." Thank you, Lily said dutifully. Can I come back tomorrow and finish my dinosaur? We'll see, Michael said, his mind still reeling from the discovery. Mrs. Jenkins might need to rest. As they walked upstairs to their apartment, Michael felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. All this time he'd been thinking of Eleanor Palmer as someone from a different world, when their worlds had intersected long before either of them realized. The community center at Riverside Apartments was filled beyond capacity. Residents crowded onto folding chairs, stood along the walls, whispered nervously to neighbors. Many were seniors who had lived in the building for decades. Others were young families drawn by the affordable rent. Michael stood near the back, Gloria beside him, Lily coloring quietly at their feet. He'd helped spread the word about the meeting, though Eleanor had been deliberately vague about its purpose. Do you know what she's planning? Gloria asked quietly. Michael shook his head. She said it was important that all residents should hear it directly from her. Gloria sniffed. Big announcements from property owners rarely benefit tenants. Before Michael could respond, Eleanor entered, accompanied by Robert and a woman Michael recognized as Caroline Weber Palmer, holding his legal counsel. Eleanor wore a simple gray suit, professional, but not ostentatious, and carried a portfolio rather than a tablet or laptop. The room quieted as she took position at the front, her posture straight, but not rigid. Michael noticed she made eye contact with several residents, including Gloria, acknowledging them individually rather than addressing the crowd as a faceless whole. Thank you all for coming, Eleanor began. I'm Eleanor Palmer, CEO of Palmer Holdings, which recently acquired the Riverside Apartments. I know many of you are concerned about what this means for your homes and your community. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Eleanor waited for them to subside before continuing. Let me be direct. Riverside will be undergoing significant renovation beginning next month. Every unit will receive updates to plumbing, electrical systems, windows, security features, and common areas. The murmurs grew louder, more anxious. Eleanor raised a hand. I understand your concern. Typically, such renovations lead to substantial rent increases or even displacement. That will not happen here. She opened her portfolio, displaying the first of several architectural renderings. Riverside will become a pilot for Palmer Holdings' mixed-income housing initiative. Current residents will be guaranteed units at their current rental rates, with increases limited to cost of living adjustments only. Disbelief and cautious hope mingled in the expressions around the room. During renovation, we will arrange temporary housing in comparable units nearby with all moving expenses covered. When you return, your apartment will be safer, more energy efficient, and more comfortable, but still your home at a price you can afford. Gloria leaned toward Michael. Is she serious? I think she is, Michael replied, watching Eleanor's confident, measured delivery. Why are you doing this? Called an elderly man from the front row. What's the catch? Eleanor acknowledged the question with a nod. It's a fair question, Mr. Daniels. The financial model is complex, but essentially we'll add 2 new floors with market rate units that will subsidize the existing affordable units. The building's improved energy efficiency will reduce operating costs, and Palmer Holdings will receive tax incentives for creating sustainable mixed-income housing. She paused, then added something unexpected. But the honest answer to why, because neighborhoods like Riverside are the backbone of this city, because mixed-income communities are healthier communities, and because it's the right thing to do. The simplicity of this last statement hung in the air, devoid of corporate jargon or platitudes. Eleanor continued outlining renovation timelines, temporary relocation procedures, and the community input process for design elements. As she spoke, Michael observed the gradual shift in the room's energy, from suspicion to cautious optimism, from fear to tentative engagement. When she opened the floor for questions, residents didn't hold back. They asked about specifics, what appliances would be included, whether pets would still be allowed, how security would be handled. Eleanor answered each question, directly deferring to Robert or Caroline when necessary, but never dismissing concerns as trivial. Gloria raised her hand. What happens if this Westland development buys the surrounding buildings? Won't they just wall us off anyway? A ripple of concern moved through the room. Clearly others had been approached by Westland representatives. An excellent question, Mrs. Jenkins, Eleanor acknowledged. Palmer Holdings has secured purchase options on several strategic properties surrounding Riverside specifically to prevent that scenario. Additionally, we're working with the City Planning Commission to ensure future development maintains neighborhood connectivity. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours. Throughout, Eleanor remained engaged, present, and surprisingly transparent about both the business and community aspects of the project. It was Michael realized a masterclass in ethical development communication, not manipulating residents, but genuinely involving them. As the meeting wound down, Lily tugged at Michael's hand. Is Eleanor going to make our home prettier? Looks that way, sunshine, he replied, his eyes still on Eleanor as she spoke earnestly with an elderly couple. Good, Lily declared. I want a purple room. Gloria chuckled. Well, I'm not completely convinced, but I'll say this. She's not what I expected. No, Michael agreed quietly. She's not. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Eleanor approached them. The controlled confidence of her presentation had softened, revealing the fatigue beneath. Well, she asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. What did you think? Impressive, Michael said honestly, though the real test will be following through. Eleanor nodded, accepting the implied challenge. We will. I've already appointed a resident advisory committee to monitor progress and ensure accountability. Smart, Gloria commented, though I noticed you didn't mention your ex-husband's involvement in all this. No point adding fuel to that particular fire, Eleanor replied. Besides, this meeting wasn't about Richard or Westland. It was about Riverside's future. A community center staff member approached, informing them they needed to lock up. As they moved toward the exit, Eleanor fell into step beside Michael. There's something else, she said quietly. Something I didn't mention in the meeting. Michael raised an eyebrow questioningly. I'd like you to consider joining the project team, Eleanor said. Not as a construction worker, but as a design consultant. Your architectural background combined with your practical experience would be invaluable. Michael stopped walking, studying her face for any sign of manipulation or charity. He found none, only professional respect and something warmer, more personal. You're serious, he realized. Completely, Eleanor confirmed. This is a business decision, Michael. You understand both the technical aspects and the human impact of housing design. That's a rare combination. Before he could respond, a commotion erupted outside the community center. Raised voices, then the distinctive sound of breaking glass. They rushed outside to find a small group of young men fleeing the scene. Behind them, Eleanor's town car sat with its windows shattered, bright red spray paint covering its sides. The message was crude but clear. Palmer, L's parasite. Robert was already on the phone with security. Caroline was documenting the damage with her phone's camera. Eleanor stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Michael moved to her side. Are you okay? I'm fine, she said automatically, though her slightly trembling hand suggested otherwise. Lily pressed against Michael's leg, eyes wide at the destruction. Why did they hurt Eleanor's car? Eleanor knelt to Lily's level, her voice gentle despite the circumstances. Sometimes people are angry about things they don't understand. They think I'm going to change their neighborhood in ways they don't want. But you're making it better, Lily said with a child's simple logic. I hope so, Eleanor replied. But change is scary, even good change. As police arrived and statements were taken, Michael observed Eleanor's composure, the way she maintained dignity without arrogance, the way she calmed the alarmed community center staff, the way she prioritized others' concerns above her own. This wasn't the calculating CEO who had appeared at his door weeks ago. This was someone more complex, more human. Someone who had taken significant business and personal risks to protect a community she had no obligation to care about. When Eleanor's replacement car arrived, she turned to Michael and Gloria. I should go. There will be statements to prepare, security assessments to review. Always working, Michael commented, not unkindly. It's what I do, Eleanor replied with a small smile. Though lately I'm remembering there are other things too. Her gaze dropped to Lily, who had fallen asleep against Michael's shoulder, exhausted by the evening's events. Something softened in Eleanor's expression, a tenderness she rarely allowed herself to display. Consider my offer, she said quietly. The project needs your perspective. No strings attached. As her car pulled away, Gloria gave Michael a knowing look. That woman's fighting for something bigger than a building, Michael. And I think she's fighting for you and Lily too, whether she admits it or not. Michael watched the taillights disappear around a corner, Gloria's words settling into his consciousness. The lines between professional and personal, between obligation and choice, between past and future, were blurring in ways he hadn't anticipated. What had begun with a simple act of rescue was evolving into something far more complex, a reshaping of lives, priorities and possibilities that neither he nor Eleanor could have foreseen. And despite every instinct for caution, every hard-learned lesson about self-reliance, Michael found himself drawn toward whatever lay ahead. The next morning, he texted Eleanor a single sentence: "I'll consult on the project. When do we start?" Her reply came minutes later: "Today, and Michael, thank you for trusting me." Trust, such a simple word for such a complicated concept. Yet as Michael prepared for the day ahead, he realized that's exactly what was happening. Step by careful step, he was beginning to trust Eleanor Palmer. And perhaps more surprisingly, she was beginning to trust herself. 2 weeks into the Riverside consultation, Michael sat at a makeshift desk in the community center, surrounded by architectural drawings. The renovation plans were good, better than he'd expected, but he'd identified several opportunities to improve livability without increasing costs. He'd just finished marking up the senior apartment layouts to increase accessibility when his phone buzzed with a text from Gloria. "Lily's school called. She has a fever. I'm picking her up now." Michael frowned. Lily had seemed fine that morning, but ear infections could flare up quickly. He gathered his papers ready to leave when Eleanor entered. "How's it going?" she asked, then noted his expression. "What's wrong?" "Lily's sick. The school called. I need to go." "Of course," Eleanor said immediately. "Do you need anything? A doctor referral medication?" "Thanks, but we've been through this before." Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just hope it's not her ears again. She was supposed to see the specialist next week." Eleanor hesitated, then spoke carefully. "If you need to move the appointment up, I know several pediatric ENT specialists." Michael's instinct was to refuse, but Lily's health came before his pride. "I'll let you know." As he headed for the door, Eleanor said, "Michael, wait." She reached into her bag and retrieved a small, colorfully wrapped package. "I found this for Lily. It's a book about building construction for children. I thought she might like it." The simple gesture, clearly planned before Lily's illness, touched him. "Thank you. That's thoughtful." "It's nothing," Eleanor replied, though her expression suggested it wasn't nothing at all. "Go take care of her. The project can wait." Michael nodded, surprised by how naturally Eleanor had prioritized Lily over business concerns. Another sign of the changes in her, or perhaps simply the revelation of who she'd been all along beneath the corporate facade. When he arrived at Gloria's apartment, he found Lily curled on the sofa, her face flushed with fever, Gloria placing a cool cloth on her forehead. "Daddy," Lily said weakly, "my ear hurts again. Really bad." Michael's heart sank. The pattern was becoming familiar and increasingly concerning. "I know, sunshine. We'll get you medicine." "I already gave her children's ibuprofen," Gloria said quietly. "But she's hotter than usual, Michael." 2-point dorm. He nodded grimly, lifting Lily into his arms. "I'm taking her to urgent care." "Want me to come with you?" "No, you've done enough. Thanks for getting her from school." Back in their apartment, Michael packed a small bag, Lily's favorite stuffed animal, a change of clothes, the book Eleanor had given him. As he gathered her health insurance card, his stomach tightened at the thought of another medical bill. The consultation work for Riverside helped, but specialist care would still strain his budget to the breaking point. "Ready to go, Lil?" he asked, trying to keep his voice light. Lily nodded miserably, clutching Mr. Whiskers to her chest. "Is my ear broken forever, Daddy?" "No, sunshine," he promised, praying he was right. "We'll get it fixed." At the urgent care center, they joined the queue of sick children and anxious parents. After a 45-minute wait, a harried nurse called Lily's name. The examination confirmed Michael's fears. "Severe infection in the right ear," the doctor said. "The antibiotics from last time didn't completely clear it. She needs a stronger course, and I'm concerned about the frequency of recurrence. Has she seen an ENT specialist?" "Appointment next week," Michael explained. "I'd recommend moving that up if possible." The doctor said, writing a prescription. "With this pattern, they may want to discuss surgical options." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Surgery. The one thing he'd been hoping to avoid, both for Lily's sake and for his financially precarious situation. "How urgent is it?" he asked. "Not emergency urgent," the doctor clarified. "But I wouldn't wait months. Chronic infections can lead to hearing damage if untreated." Michael nodded, his mind racing through options. He'd been saving every extra penny from the Riverside consultation, but it wouldn't be enough. maybe a payment plan, maybe a second job, maybe... His phone buzzed. Eleanor's name appeared on the screen. "How's Lily?" her text read. "Anything I can do?" Michael stared at the message torn between self-reliance and Lily's needs. Before he could decide, another text arrived. "I know you value independence, Michael, but sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom, especially when it comes to Lily." It was as if she'd read his mind, cutting straight to the core of his internal conflict. Michael took a deep breath, then typed his reply. "Ear infection worse than before. Doctor says she needs to see specialists sooner. Might need surgery." Eleanor's response came immediately. "I'm sending Dr. Catherine Martinez's contact information. Best pediatric ENT in Pittsburgh. Tell her office you're calling on my recommendation." Michael swallowed his pride. "Thank you." Within an hour, Lily had an appointment for the following morning. Michael didn't ask how Eleanor had arranged it so quickly. Some questions were less important than solutions. That night, as Lily finally drifted to sleep, Michael sat beside her bed watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. His phone buzzed softly with another text from Eleanor. "How is she?" "Sleeping now. Fever's down a little." "Good. You should rest too." Michael smiled faintly at her concern. "Hard to sleep when she's sick." "I understand. My father used to sit by my bed all night when I had strep throat as a child. Said he couldn't sleep anyway, might as well keep watch." The simple, personal revelation struck Michael. Eleanor rarely spoke of her childhood or her father. "Your dad sounds like a good man," he replied. "The best," Eleanor texted back. "He taught me everything important, though I haven't always remembered the lessons." "What was the most important one?" Michael asked, genuinely curious. There was a pause before her answer appeared. "That we're measured by how we treat people who can't do anything for us in return." The words echoed what Gloria had said about Frank's philosophy, another connection between their seemingly separate worlds. "Your father and mine might have gotten along," Michael texted. "Mine always said integrity doesn't cost anything, but its absence costs everything." "Wise man," Eleanor replied. "Get some rest, Michael. I'll check in tomorrow." As he set his phone aside, Michael found himself wondering about the paths that had led them here. A CEO and a construction worker from seemingly opposite worlds, yet connected by values their fathers had instilled. Perhaps they weren't so different after all. Dr. Martinez's office was unlike any medical facility Michael had ever visited with Lily. Located in an upscale medical building downtown, it featured a cheerful waiting room with interactive wall displays and tablet computers preloaded with children's games. "Daddy, look," Lily exclaimed, her discomfort temporarily forgotten as she discovered a display about how ears work. "This is inside my head." Michael smiled, relieved to see her interest overcoming her anxiety. As he approached the reception desk, he braced himself for the inevitable insurance discussion. "Lily Turner for Dr. Martinez," he said, presenting their insurance card. "We're a referral from urgent care." The receptionist checked her computer. "Ah, yes, Sir Palmer's recommendation. Everything's been arranged." She smiled warmly. "Dr. Martinez will see Lily first thing. In the meantime, can I get you coffee, water?" Michael blinked, confused by the reception. "Arranged." "Ms. Palmer called personally," the receptionist explained. "She holds Dr. Martinez in high regard. The doctor has reserved extra time for Lily today." Before Michael could process this, Dr. Martinez herself appeared, a tall woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Mr. Turner, I'm Catherine Martinez. Let's talk about Lily's ears." The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Martinez spoke directly to Lily, explaining each step before she did it, earning the child's trust with her straightforward approach. Afterward, in her office, she showed Michael detailed images of Lily's ear canals. "The pattern of infection is clear," she explained. "Lily has abnormally narrow eustachian tubes, which makes drainage difficult. That's why the infections keep recurring despite antibiotics." "What's the solution?" Michael asked, steeling himself. "Tympanostomy tubes," Dr. Martinez said. "A minor surgical procedure. We place small tubes in the eardrums to improve airflow and drainage. Its outpatient surgery takes about 15 minutes and has an excellent success rate. And without it, the infections will likely continue with increasing risk of hearing damage." Her expression was compassionate but direct. "I don't say this to frighten you, Mr. Turner, but to be clear about the medical necessity. Michael nodded, his throat tight. How soon? I can schedule her for next week, Tuesday morning. And the cost? Michael finally asked the question that had been weighing on him. Dr. Martinez looked slightly surprised. Didn't Ms. Palmer explain your insurance will cover a portion, and the Palmer Children's Health Initiative covers the remainder? There's no out-of-pocket expense for you. Michael's confusion must have shown on his face because Dr. Martinez continued. It's a foundation that covers pediatric care gaps for working families. Ms. Palmer is one of our major donors. Eleanor hadn't mentioned any foundation. She'd simply connected him with the doctor and stepped back, allowing him to handle Lily's care without financial pressure or obligation. No fanfare, no expectation of gratitude, just solving a problem she could solve. After scheduling the surgery, Michael and Lily left the medical building. He felt simultaneously relieved about Lily's treatment plan and unsettled by Eleanor's behind-the-scenes intervention. Daddy, is my ear going to be fixed? Lily asked as they walked to the bus stop. Yes, sunshine. Dr. Martinez is going to put tiny tubes in your ears to help them drain better. Lily considered this seriously. Like the pipes under the sink that you fixed. Michael smiled. Something like that. Will it hurt? You'll be asleep during the operation, he assured her. You might have a little pain afterward, but nothing like the infections. Lily nodded, satisfied with his explanation. Can we tell Eleanor? She gave me a book about building things. Maybe there's a part about building ear tubes. We'll tell her. Michael promised, his mixed feelings about Eleanor's assistance fading in the face of Lily's simple trust. As they boarded the bus, Michael's phone buzzed with a text. He expected Eleanor, but it was from an unknown number. Turner, need to discuss something important about Palmer Holdings. Information you should know before getting more involved. Meet today, Mike Russo. Michael stared at the message, a sense of unease growing. Why would his foreman from Grand Tower want to discuss Palmer Holdings? And what information could be so important that Russo would reach out directly? Whatever it was, Michael suspected it would complicate the already complex relationship developing between himself and Eleanor Palmer, a relationship that now included not just professional collaboration and growing personal connection, but also a debt of gratitude he hadn't asked for, but couldn't deny. The diner was nearly empty at 3 p.m., halfway between lunch and dinner rushes. Michael found Mike Russo in a corner booth, hunched over a mug of coffee, looking distinctly uncomfortable in civilian clothes. As site foreman, Russo always carried himself with a certain swagger. Today he seemed diminished, glancing repeatedly toward the door. Turner, he acknowledged as Michael slid into the booth. Thanks for coming. Your message was intriguing, Michael replied carefully. What's this about? Russo glanced around before leaning forward. How well do you know Palmer Holdings? Really know them? Well enough, Michael said, his guard rising. Why? Because I've been with them for 15 years and even I didn't know everything. Russo took a folded paper from his jacket pocket. This came across my desk yesterday. Inspection report from the original foundation pour at Grand Tower. Michael took the document, scanning its contents. His construction experience made the technical language easily digestible, but what he found made little sense. This can't be right, he said. These stress tolerances are deliberately understated. Exactly. Russo nodded grimly. The official report submitted to the city shows different numbers, higher, safer numbers. This is the internal version. Michael studied the document more carefully. Where did you get this anonymous email? At first I thought it was a fake, so I checked against some core samples we took last month after that beam fell. The samples match these numbers, not the official ones. The implications settled heavily between them. You're saying Palmer Holdings falsified inspection reports? Someone did, Russo confirmed. Maybe not Palmer herself, but someone high up. And there's more. He slid another document across the table. Original material orders for the east support columns were changed last minute. Cheaper composite replaced the specified high-grade steel. Again, official documents don't show this substitution. Michael felt a cold weight in his stomach. This was exactly what Eleanor had accused Richard of doing, cutting corners, compromising safety for profit. Had she been projecting her own sins onto her ex-husband? Or was there another explanation? Why are you showing me this? Michael asked finally. Russo shifted uncomfortably. Word is you're getting tight with Palmer, consulting on the Riverside project. Some even say you're personally involved. That's not... I don't care about your personal life, Turner, Russo interrupted, but you're one of my best workers. Good head on your shoulders. And I've seen your architecture background. You could have a real future in this business. I don't want to see you tangled up in something that could blow up. You think Grand Tower is unsafe, Michael stated. I think corners were cut, Russo corrected carefully. How bad, I don't know yet, but there's a reason that beam fell, and I'm starting to think it wasn't an accident. Michael remembered the day of the accident, how he'd noticed something off about the support materials just before the crash. At the time, he'd attributed it to his own distraction. Now he wondered if his architect's eye had picked up on a genuine problem. Have you reported this to who? Russo asked bitterly. The city inspectors who signed off on the falsified reports, Palmer Holdings Management. For all I know, they're all in on it. Eleanor wouldn't, maybe not, Russo conceded. But her ex-husband, that Richard Mills character, I worked on his projects before the divorce. The man never met a building code he wouldn't bend. The mention of Richard added another layer of complexity. Could this be part of his vendetta against Eleanor, falsifying documents to make her company look corrupt? I need to look into this, Michael said finally. Carefully, Russo warned. Whoever sent these documents is taking a big risk. If Grand Tower has structural issues and someone's covering it up, there's serious money and potential criminal charges at stake. As Michael left the diner, his mind raced with conflicting thoughts. The Eleanor Palmer he'd come to know over the past weeks, who played with Lily in the park, who designed affordable housing for vulnerable residents, who arranged medical care without fanfare, seemed incapable of the kind of negligence these documents suggested. But the Eleanor Palmer, who'd built a real estate empire in a cutthroat industry, who'd fought and won against a ruthless ex-husband, that Eleanor might be capable of many things in the name of business success. The question was, which Eleanor was Rottenera? Lily's surgery was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. Tuesday. Michael spent Monday night in the hospital's parent room, watching his daughter's sleep medication, already beginning to relax her small body in preparation for the procedure. She seemed impossibly tiny in the hospital bed, her favorite stuffed cat tucked under one arm. He hadn't told Eleanor about his meeting with Russo or the troubling documents. Not yet. First, he needed to focus on Lily. Everything else could wait. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Turning, he was surprised to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, a small gift bag in her hand. I hope I'm not intruding, she said quietly. No, come in, Michael replied, genuinely glad to see her, despite his conflicted feelings. Lily would be thrilled you're here, though she's already asleep. Eleanor approached the bed carefully, her usual confidence tempered by the hospital setting. The anesthesia prep, she noted. How is she feeling about tomorrow? Nervous but brave, Michael said. Dr. Martinez explained everything beautifully. Lily's decided the ear tubes are like tiny tunnels for the bad water to escape. Eleanor smiled, a budding engineer's perspective. She placed the gift bag on the bedside table. Just some things for after the surgery. Books, a coloring set, headphones designed for children with ear sensitivity. Thank you, Michael said, touched by the thoughtfulness. Not just for the gifts, for everything. Eleanor shook her head slightly. You don't need to thank me. I do, he insisted. The specialist appointment of the Palmer Children's Health Initiative. I didn't know about that, by the way. A faint blush colored Eleanor's cheeks. It's a small foundation. Started it after my father died. He always delayed his own medical care because of costs. I wanted to create something to help working families avoid those impossible choices. Michael studied her, trying to reconcile this woman with the potential safety violations Russo had shown him. They seemed like two different people. How are the Riverside plans coming? Eleanor asked, changing the subject. Good, Michael replied, letting her redirect the conversation. I've been working on adaptations to make the senior units more accessible without looking institutional. Wider doorways, grab bars that double as towel racks, that kind of thing. I'd love to see them. Tomorrow, Michael promised, after Lily's recovery. Eleanor nodded, then checked her watch. I should go. You need to rest, and I have an early meeting. Always working, Michael commented, echoing his remark from the community center. A necessary evil, she smiled, but one with purpose, at least. At the door, she paused. Michael, if you need anything at all, please call, day or night. The sincerity in her voice made something twist inside him. How could this be the same person who would falsify building safety reports? I will, he promised, knowing he probably wouldn't. After she left, Michael returned to Lily's bedside more confused than ever. Tomorrow he would focus solely on his daughter. But afterward, he needed answers about Grand Tower and about Eleanor Palmer. The surgery went smoothly. Dr. Martinez emerged from the operating room exactly when she'd promised, her confident smile immediately easing Michael's anxiety. Textbook procedure, she reported. Lily did beautifully. The tubes are in place and we've already drained significant fluid from both ears. She'll feel much better once the anesthesia wears off. When can I see her? She's in recovery now. A nurse will take you back in about 15 minutes. She'll be groggy and might not remember much of today, which is completely normal. True to the doctor's word, Michael was soon sitting beside a very sleepy Lily in the recovery area. Her eyes fluttered open, briefly registered his presence, then closed again as she drifted in and out of medication-induced sleep. "Daddy," she murmured at one point, "my ears feel funny." "That's the medicine, sunshine," he explained softly. "And the new tubes. They're working to make your ears better." "Mm-hmm," she hummed, already slipping back into sleep. By late afternoon, they were cleared to go home. Lily was still drowsy but more alert, carefully touching the bandages behind her ears. "Can I see Eleanor's presents now?" she asked as Michael helped her into her coat. "As soon as we get home," he promised. "She brought books and coloring things." "Is she coming to see us?" "Not today, sunshine. You need to rest." Lily's face fell slightly. "But tomorrow." "We'll see," Michael hedged, unwilling to make promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Gloria was waiting when they arrived home, the apartment warm and filled with the smell of homemade chicken soup. "There's my brave girl," she greeted Lily. "I made your favorite soup, and there's pudding for dessert." "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins," Lily said politely, though her attention had already shifted to the gift bag from Eleanor. Michael helped her settle on the couch, then unpacked Eleanor's gifts. 3 picture books about construction and architecture. A deluxe coloring set, child-sized headphones with a note explaining they were specially designed to be comfortable for sensitive ears, and a small stuffed owl. "Look, Daddy," Lily exclaimed, hugging the owl. "It's like the one we saw at the museum," Eleanor remembered. Michael recalled their conversation in the park when Lily had described her museum visit, including her fascination with the owl exhibit. The fact that Eleanor had remembered such a small detail touched him deeply. While Lily examined her gifts, Michael stepped into the kitchen where Gloria was stirring the soup. "Surgery went well," she asked. "Perfectly," he confirmed. "Dr. Martinez says the tubes should prevent further infections." "Good. That child's been through enough pain." Gloria studied his face. "You look troubled, Michael. And it's not just worry about Lily." He sometimes forgot how perceptive Gloria could be. "It's complicated." "It usually is when a woman's involved," Gloria observed wryly, "especially one as complex as Eleanor Palmer." Michael hesitated, then decided Gloria's perspective might be valuable. "What would you say if I told you I'd seen documents suggesting Palmer Holdings might have cut corners on the Grand Tower construction safety issues, falsified reports?" Gloria's eyebrows rose. "I'd say that doesn't sound like the woman who spent an hour explaining accessible bathroom designs to me last week." "That's the problem," Michael admitted. "The Eleanor I've come to know doesn't match with what these documents suggest." "Have you asked her about them?" "Not yet. I wanted to get through Lily's surgery first." Gloria nodded approvingly. "Priorities straight, but Michael, in my experience, things that seem too simple usually are. Frank always said construction projects have more layers than a wedding cake and twice as many chances for something to go wrong." Meaning? "Meaning maybe there's more to the story than what's in those papers," Gloria suggested. "Or maybe you don't have all the papers." Michael considered this. "There is someone else who might know more. Robert Collins, Eleanor's assistant. He's been with the company since the beginning." "Might be worth a conversation," Gloria agreed, "before you go making judgments." After dinner with Lily settled in bed for an early night, Michael found himself on the small balcony, again staring at the Grand Tower in the distance. Its skeletal upper floors reached toward the sky, innocent-looking from this distance. He thought about the workers who would eventually occupy those offices, unaware of potential dangers beneath their feet. His phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "How did the surgery go?" "Is Lily comfortable?" He replied truthfully. "Surgery went perfectly. She's already sleeping." Love the gifts, especially the owl. I'm glad. You must be exhausted. Get some rest. Michael stared at the message, struck again by the disconnect between the caring woman who remembered a child's fascination with museum owls and the potential safety violations in the Grand Tower documents. Eleanor, he typed impulsively, we need to talk about Grand Tower. I've seen some concerning documents. The three dots indicating she was typing disappeared, then reappeared. What kind of documents? Material substitutions, modified inspection reports. This time the pause was longer. Finally, yes, we should talk. Tomorrow, my office, 2 p.m. I'll be there, Michael confirmed, feeling both relief and apprehension. Tomorrow would reveal which Eleanor Palmer was real, the caring woman who'd entered their lives, or the ruthless CEO who would compromise safety for profit. Palmer Holdings occupied the top 5 floors of a downtown high-rise. The reception area on the 30th floor featured soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the Pittsburgh skyline. Michael, dressed in his one good shirt and least-worn jeans, felt distinctly out of place among the suited professionals moving purposefully through the space. Mr. Turner, the receptionist greeted him with practiced warmth. Miss Palmer is expecting you. Robert will show you to her office. Robert Collins appeared almost immediately, his expression neutral, but his eyes curious. Mr. Turner, this way, please. As they rode the executive elevator to the 34th floor, Robert broke the silence. Miss Palmer mentioned you have concerns about Grand Tower. Yes, Michael replied, not elaborating. Robert studied him for a moment. She values your opinion greatly, you know, more than most of the consultants we pay small fortunes. Michael wasn't sure how to respond to this, so he simply nodded. I've worked with Eleanor for 15 years, Robert continued. Through the company's growth, her marriage, the divorce, everything. I've never seen her quite so invested in someone's good opinion. Before Michael could process this, the elevator doors opened. Robert led him down a corridor lined with architectural models of Palmer Holdings projects, stopping at a set of double doors. She's on a call, Robert explained. Should be done shortly. Can I get you anything while you wait? No, thank you. Robert hesitated, then spoke in a lower voice. Whatever concerns you have, Mr. Turner, I hope you'll listen to her explanation with an open mind. Eleanor Palmer is many things, but she's not someone who would knowingly endanger lives. With that cryptic statement, he departed, leaving Michael to contemplate the models. They were impressive, detailed, innovative, showing a clear evolution in design philosophy over the years. The newest model, Grand Tower, stood apart, taller, more ambitious, with distinctive stepped terraces creating green spaces at multiple levels. It's designed to breathe, Eleanor's voice came from behind him. Most skyscrapers are sealed environments divorced from nature. I wanted something different. Michael turned to find her standing in the doorway of her office. She wore a simple gray, her hair pulled back, looking every inch the CEO. Yet something in her eyes, uncertainty perhaps, reminded him of the woman who'd knelt beside Lily to examine special rocks in the park. It's beautiful, he acknowledged. Thank you, she said, gesturing him inside. How's Lily today? Better. The doctor says she can return to school tomorrow. That's wonderful news. They were dancing around the real purpose of his visit, both reluctant to disrupt their carefully constructed rapport. Finally, Eleanor sighed. You said you've seen documents about Grand Tower. Material substitutions? Michael nodded, pulling the folded papers from his pocket. Mike Russo showed these to me. Internal reports that don't match what was filed with the city. Safety margins, reduced cheaper materials, substituted for what was specified. Eleanor took the documents, her expression grave as she reviewed them. These are real, she confirmed, but the context is missing. She walked to her desk and pressed an intercom button. Robert, please bring the Grand Tower audit files. Turning back to Michael, she gestured to a seating area by the windows. This will take some explanation. They sat across from each other, the city spread below them like a diorama. Eleanor seemed to be organizing her thoughts, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest. About 8 months ago, she began, I started noticing discrepancies in our material purchasing for Grand Tower. Small things at first, quantities that didn't match specifications vendors changed without proper documentation. I initiated an internal audit. Robert entered with a thick binder, placing it on the table between them, before discreetly withdrawing. The audit revealed systematic problems. Eleanor continued, opening the binder. Material substitutions, modified inspection, parameters changes that compromised our safety standards. The question was, who authorized these changes? Richard, Michael guessed. That was my first thought. Eleanor nodded. But Richard hasn't had access to our systems since the divorce. These changes were made recently using high-level authorization codes. She turned to a specific page showing Michael a spreadsheet of access logs. Someone inside Palmer Holdings was making these changes, someone with executive access. You think you have a saboteur? I know we do, Eleanor said grimly. The question is who? We've narrowed it to 3 possibilities, all executives with the necessary system access. We're building evidence carefully, quietly. Why quietly? Why not confront them? Because we don't know how deep this goes or what the motivation is. Simple greed, corporate espionage. Or is it personal, someone loyal to Richard helping his vendetta against me? She shook her head. Until we're certain, we're proceeding carefully. And in the meantime, Michael challenged, people are working in that building. What about their safety? We've implemented additional inspections, structural reinforcements, all under the guise of quality enhancement, Eleanor explained. The compromised areas have been identified and addressed. Grand Tower is safe, I've made certain of it. She met his gaze directly. I would never risk lives, Michael. Never. Something in her voice, the steel beneath the silk, convinced him she was telling the truth. The Eleanor he'd come to know was indeed real. Why didn't you tell me this before? He asked quietly. It's an active investigation, she replied. The fewer people who know, the better our chances of catching whoever's responsible. And I didn't want to burden you with corporate intrigue when you had Lily to worry about. Michael absorbed this information, relief mingling with lingering concern. What can I do to help? Eleanor looked genuinely surprised by the offer. You believe me just like that. I believe you wouldn't compromise safety, Michael clarified. The rest, I'm still processing. But if Grand Tower is being sabotaged, I want to help stop it. I work there too, remember? A small smile touched Eleanor's lips. I remember. She hesitated, then continued. Actually, there is something you might help with. As a site worker, you might notice things our investigators wouldn't: unusual activities, unauthorized personnel patterns that don't fit normal construction procedures. You want me to be your eyes on the ground. Only if you're comfortable with it, Eleanor stressed. This isn't what you signed up for with the Riverside consultation. Michael thought about Gloria's apartment being ransacked, about Eleanor's vandalized car, about the beam that had nearly killed her. Whatever game was being played, it had already turned dangerous. I'll help, he decided, but I need complete transparency from you going forward. No more surprises. Agreed, Eleanor said immediately. Complete transparency. As they sealed their new arrangement, Michael couldn't help feeling they'd crossed some invisible threshold. Their relationship had evolved beyond professional collaboration or budding friendship into something more complex, a partnership built on mutual trust despite lingering questions. There's something else you should know, Eleanor added, turning to another section of the binder. The day of the accident, the falling beam that nearly killed me, it wasn't random. Inspection showed the support cables had been partially severed. It was deliberate. The revelation sent a chill through Michael. Someone tried to kill you. Or seriously injure me, Eleanor confirmed. Either way, it's escalated beyond business rivalry into something much more dangerous. Does Richard know about the sabotage? I haven't confronted him directly about the internal saboteur, but he knows I suspect him of orchestrating problems at Grand Tower. His reaction was, interesting. Interesting how, surprised but not by the accusation itself, more that I'd connected him to it, Eleanor explained. Almost as if he expected me to suspect someone else. Which could mean he's not behind it, Michael reasoned, or that he's working with someone you wouldn't suspect. Exactly. Eleanor closed the binder. Welcome to corporate politics at its most lethal. Michael shook his head slightly. Not exactly what I expected when I pulled you from that car. Regrets, Eleanor asked, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her composed exterior. No, Michael said honestly, but I do worry about Lily getting caught in the crossfire of whatever this is. That's a valid concern, Eleanor acknowledged. I've taken the liberty of upgrading security at Riverside, but perhaps we should discuss additional measures for you and Lily specifically. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Michael cautioned. For now, awareness is our best defense. I'll keep my eyes open at the site, see what I can learn. As they concluded their meeting, Robert reappeared to escort Michael back to reception. In the elevator, the older man studied Michael thoughtfully. She told you about the internal investigation, Robert observed. It wasn't a question. Yes. Not many people have her trust like that, Robert said. In fact, I can count them on one hand. I'm not sure I've done anything to earn it, Michael admitted. You saved her life, Robert pointed out. But more importantly, you've challenged her. Eleanor respects that more than blind loyalty. As the elevator reached the ground floor, Robert added, whatever's happening between you two, and I'm not presuming to know what that is, it's changing her. For the better, I think. The observation stayed with Michael as he left the Palmer Holdings building. Was he changing Eleanor? Perhaps, but she was certainly changing him. Opening doors he'd thought permanently closed, challenging his carefully constructed independence, making him consider possibilities beyond day-to-day survival. And now apparently involving him in corporate espionage and potential criminal investigation. Not exactly the straightforward life he'd built for Lily's sake. Speaking of Lily, he checked his watch and quickened his pace. He'd promised to be home in time for dinner, and Gloria was bringing her famous lasagna to celebrate Lily's successful surgery. Corporate intrigue would have to wait. Right now, his daughter needed him. The next 2 weeks established a new rhythm to their lives. Michael divided his time between the Riverside consultation, his regular shifts at Grand Tower, and caring for Lily as she recovered from surgery. Eleanor balanced her CEO responsibilities with increasingly frequent visits to Riverside, where she seemed genuinely invested in the residents' input. They maintained professional boundaries in public, but their private interactions grew more personal. Eleanor joined them for dinner twice, delighting Lily with architecture books and genuine interest in her 6-year-old perspectives. Michael found himself looking forward to these evenings more than he wanted to admit. At Grand Tower, Michael kept his eyes open for anything unusual. Several times he noticed unfamiliar workers in restricted areas, but when questioned, they always produced valid credentials. He documented these encounters for Eleanor, adding them to her growing investigation file. On a Wednesday afternoon, Michael was reviewing updated Riverside plans when his phone rang. Gloria's number. Michael? Her voice was tight with tension. Someone's been asking questions about you and Lily at the school. A man claiming to be from child services, but the principal got suspicious and called me since I'm on Lily's emergency contact list. Michael's blood ran cold. Where's Lily now? Safe at school. The principal is keeping her in the office until you or I pick her up. I'm on my way, Michael said, already gathering his things. Did they get a description of this man? Tall, well-dressed, expensive watch. Asked specifically about your work schedule when Lily's alone who watches her? The description was vague but concerning. Call the school back. Tell them I'm coming directly and no one else is authorized to pick up Lily. No one. Already did, Gloria assured him. Be careful, Michael. This doesn't feel right. Michael's mind raced as he drove to the school. Child services wouldn't make an unscheduled visit without contacting him first. And they certainly wouldn't ask about his work schedule or when Lily was alone. This was something else, something connected to Grand Tower, to Richard Mills, to whatever tangled web he'd found himself in. When he reached the school, the principal met him at the secured entrance, checking his ID before allowing him inside. Mr. Turner, Lily's in my office. She's fine, doesn't know anything about the visitor. Thank you for being cautious, Michael said sincerely. Of course, I should mention the man left a business card, said he'd return tomorrow to complete his assessment. She handed Michael a card embossed with the county seal. I called the number to verify. It's legitimate, but they have no record of a case involving Lily. Michael examined the card, his unease growing. Could I see your visitor log and security footage? The principal hesitated only briefly before nodding. Given the circumstances, yes. This way. The visitor log showed a neat signature, Thomas Wilson County Child Welfare. The handwriting was precise, almost too perfect. The security footage showed a tall man in an expensive suit, his face partially obscured by the angle of the camera. Nothing definitively identifiable, yet something about his posture seemed familiar. Daddy? Lily's voice broke through his concentration as she burst from the principal's office. Are we going home early? Is it because of my ears? Michael forced a smile, kneeling to hug her. Yes, sunshine, special early day today. As he drove home, Lily chattering happily in the back seat, Michael made a decision. This had gone beyond corporate rivalry or business sabotage. Someone was targeting his child. The time for careful investigation was over. He called Eleanor as soon as Lily was settled with Gloria in her apartment. "Someone came to Lily's school," he said without preamble, pretending to be from child services, asking about when she's alone. Eleanor's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Are you both safe?" "For now." Gloria's watching her. "But Eleanor, this crosses a line. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with, no matter how ugly." "Who would do this, Richard?" "It's possible," Eleanor admitted, "but it doesn't fit his usual tactics. Richard is many things, but he's never involved children in his vendettas." "Then who?" "I don't know," she said, frustration evident in her voice. "But I'm going to find out. In the meantime, I'm sending security to Riverside, professional discreet. They'll keep their distance but maintain surveillance." "I don't want to frighten Lily," Michael cautioned. "They'll be invisible to her," Eleanor promised. "But Michael, perhaps you should consider relocating temporarily. Both of you, I have a secure property outside the city." "No," Michael said firmly. "I won't uproot Lily or show whoever this is that we're running scared. We stay, but we're careful." After a pause, Eleanor spoke softly. "I never meant to bring this danger into your lives." "You didn't," Michael replied. "I brought it the moment I pulled you from that car. No regrets, remember." "No regrets," she echoed, though her voice suggested otherwise. "I'll come by this evening. We need to make plans." As Michael ended the call, he gazed out his apartment window at the cityscape beyond Grand Tower, rising in the distance like a skeletal finger pointing accusingly at the sky. Whoever was behind this, Richard, a corporate saboteur, or someone else entirely, had made a critical mistake. They had threatened Lily. And Michael Turner, the quiet, self-contained construction worker who'd spent years carefully building a stable life for his daughter, now had one simple, focused purpose: to identify the threat and eliminate it no matter what the cost. For the first time since pulling Eleanor from the wreckage of her car, Michael felt the same cold clarity he'd experienced in the Navy, the absolute certainty that comes when protecting what matters most. Whoever had visited Lily's school had awakened something in Michael that had been dormant for years. They were about to discover just how dangerous a devoted father could be. Rain pounded against the windows of Eleanor's penthouse as they gathered around her dining table, now converted into an impromptu command center. Laptops, documents, and building plans covered the polished surface. Michael studied security footage from Lily's school for the fifth time, scrutinizing every frame of the mysterious visitor. "Still nothing identifiable," he muttered, frustration evident in his voice. Eleanor looked up from her computer. "The school's security system needs an upgrade. I've already spoken with the principal about funding improvements." "That won't help us now," Michael pointed out. "No, but it might prevent future incidents," Eleanor countered. "And I've had my security team run background checks on all school staff and regular visitors. Nothing concerning so far." Carolyn Weber, Eleanor's legal counsel, entered with fresh coffee. "I've reviewed our options. Legally, we're limited without more evidence, but I've put the school district's security office on alert. They've agreed to increase patrols." Michael nodded his thanks, though his expression remained grim. It had been 3 days since the school incident. Lily was staying with Gloria during school hours, and an unmarked security car maintained discreet surveillance on the Riverside building. These were necessary precautions, but they felt inadequate against an unknown threat. "What about the Grand Tower investigation?" Michael asked. "Any progress identifying our saboteur?" Robert, who had been quietly analyzing spreadsheets in the corner, looked up. "We've eliminated one suspect. Thomas Chen's access credentials were used while he was verifiably out of the country. That leaves two possibilities: Jennifer Keyes, VP of Operations, or—" He hesitated, glancing at Eleanor. "Or me," she finished. "As CEO, my credentials could theoretically authorize any change in the system." "That's absurd," Michael said immediately. "You wouldn't sabotage your own project." "Someone with access to my authorization codes could," Eleanor explained, "which is why we've been implementing new security protocols without announcing them." "A trap," Michael realized. "Precisely," Robert confirmed. "We've created a particularly tempting opportunity, a major material order for the upper floors with a substantial cost-saving option that compromises safety standards. Only 3 people know about this fictitious opportunity: Eleanor, myself, and now you." "When is this supposed to happen?" Michael asked. "The order confirmation is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Eleanor said. "If someone attempts to modify it using executive credentials, we'll know who our saboteur is." Michael nodded, impressed by the strategy but still troubled by the school incident. And if this is connected to the man at Lily's school, then we'll be one step closer to ensuring her safety. Eleanor replied, reaching across the table to briefly touch his hand, a small gesture of reassurance that communicated more than words. Thunder rumbled outside as the storm intensified. Eleanor moved to close the balcony doors, pausing to stare out at the rain-slicked city. Grand Tower was barely visible through the downpour, its construction lights glowing faintly in the distance. "I never imagined it would come to this," she said quietly. "When I started Palmer Holdings, all I wanted was to create spaces that improved lives. Buildings with purpose beyond profit. Somewhere along the way, things got complicated." Michael joined her at the window. "Power attracts complication. And enemies." "Like Richard," Eleanor agreed. "Though I'm beginning to wonder if he's behind this at all. It feels different, more personal, more intimate somehow. As if whoever is doing this knows exactly how to hurt me." "Through your company," Michael observed. "Your projects." Eleanor turned to him, her expression vulnerable in a way he rarely saw. "And now through the people I care about. You and Lily." The admission hung between them, neither willing to examine it too closely in front of Robert and Carolyn. But Michael felt its weight, the acknowledgement that whatever was developing between them had become significant enough to be weaponized by their enemies. "We should call it a night," Carolyn suggested tactfully. "Tomorrow's trap may give us the answers we need." As Robert and Caroline gathered their things to leave, Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text. She read it, her expression darkening. "What is it?" Michael asked once they were alone. "Security at Riverside," she replied. "They noticed someone taking photographs of the building earlier today. When approached, the person claimed to be from a real estate blog, but the credentials were fake." Michael's jaw tightened. Description: woman mid-30s, professional attire. Could be anyone, a genuine blogger without proper press credentials or someone scouting the building layout. Michael finished grimly. "I don't like this, Eleanor. It feels like we're being surrounded, studied from all angles." "I know." She moved to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of scotch, handing one to Michael. "But tomorrow we may have our first real lead." They clinked glasses, the gesture more solemn than celebratory. Outside, lightning flashed momentarily, illuminating the entire city in stark relief. "Stay here tonight," Eleanor said suddenly. "The guest room is made up, and it's safer than driving back to Riverside in this storm." Michael hesitated. "Lily is safe with Gloria, with security watching the building," Eleanor reminded him. "You can call her, tell her you're working late. It's not even a lie." The rational part of Michael knew she was right. The storm was dangerous, and they were making progress on identifying the threats. Still, being away from Lily overnight felt wrong, especially now. "I'll call her," he decided finally, "but I leave first thing in the morning." Eleanor nodded, understanding his priorities. Of course, after speaking with Lily and assuring himself she was settled happily with Gloria. Michael found himself standing awkwardly in Eleanor's guest room. The space was impeccably furnished but impersonal, clearly not used often. A soft knock preceded Eleanor's appearance with a stack of folded clothes. "Something to sleep in," she explained. "They might be a bit small. They belong to my father. He kept a few things here for unexpected visits." Michael accepted the offering, touched by the sentiment behind it. "Thank you. Not just for this, but for everything you are doing to protect Lily." "You don't need to thank me for that," Eleanor said quietly. "I care about her too, you know. And you." The simple admission created a charged silence between them. For a moment, Michael thought Eleanor might step closer, might bridge the careful distance they'd maintained. Instead, she took a small step back. "We should both get some rest," she said. "Tomorrow will be revealing one way or another." After she left, Michael changed into the borrowed clothes, a soft t-shirt and flannel pants that indeed fit a bit snugly, and lay on the guest bed listening to the storm rage outside. His thoughts raced between concern for Lily, the trap set for tomorrow, and the unspoken current flowing between himself and Eleanor. When sleep finally came, it was fitful and filled with dreams of falling beams, shadowy figures at school gates, and Eleanor standing alone on the skeleton of Grand Tower as the storm approached. Morning arrived with clearing skies and a text message that woke Michael at 6:30 a.m. Order modified at 3:17 a.m. using executive credentials. Tracing source now. Meeting in office at 8. Michael dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes, finding Eleanor already in the kitchen, speaking intensely with Robert on the phone while managing 3 different laptops. Yes, full access logs and security footage from the executive floor, she was saying. I want to know if anyone was physically present in the building. She noticed Michael and mouthed coffee while pointing to a freshly brewed pot. We have movement, she explained after ending the call. Someone took the bait, modified the order using executive credentials, and tried to cover their tracks afterward. Whose credentials? Michael asked, pouring himself coffee. Mine, Eleanor said grimly, but used remotely, not from my devices. The system logs show access from an external IP address that's being traced now. So we still don't know who. Not definitively, but we're closing in. Eleanor closed one laptop, her expression determined. The modified order included a digital signature that should be traceable. Caroline's team is working on it now. Michael checked his phone, no messages from Gloria, which was good news. I need to get back to Riverside, check on Lily. Of course, Eleanor agreed. My driver can take you. I'm heading to the office to coordinate the investigation. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor's phone rang again. Her expression shifted from focused to shocked as she listened. Are you certain? She asked, her voice tense. No, secure the evidence. I'm on my way. She ended the call, her face pale. What is it? Michael asked. They traced the IP address, Eleanor said, her voice unnaturally calm. It came from Richard's company, Westland Development. So it was Richard all along, Michael concluded, not entirely surprised. Not exactly, Eleanor corrected. The specific computer belongs to his executive assistant, Jennifer Davis. The same Jennifer who was his assistant when we were married, the one he left me for. Michael remembered the story Richard had left Eleanor for his 24-year-old assistant. She has access to Palmer Holding systems. She shouldn't, Eleanor said, gathering her things with rapid efficiency. But if Richard gave her access to old credentials of mine, or if she had passwords from when they were having their affair, she shook her head. It doesn't matter how. We have our connection. What's next? I confront Richard, Eleanor stated flatly, with evidence this time, not just suspicion. I'm coming with you, Michael said immediately. Eleanor paused. This could get ugly, Michael. Richard, when cornered, is not a rational man. All the more reason you shouldn't face him alone. Their eyes met in silent communication, a wordless negotiation between two people accustomed to handling problems independently. Finally, Eleanor nodded. After you check on Lily, she conceded, family first. The simple acknowledgement of his priorities, so different from their early interactions, struck Michael deeply. Eleanor truly understood what mattered to him now. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? Stating the obvious. She smiled slightly. Perhaps I'm finally learning to measure value beyond the bottom line. Lily was perfectly fine, happily eating breakfast with Gloria when Michael arrived. Her tubes were healing well, and she was excited about returning to her regular classroom schedule. Daddy, Mrs. Jenkins says I can help plant flowers in the community garden this weekend. Can I? Of course, sunshine, Michael agreed, his heart lightening at her enthusiasm. The world might be complicated and threatening, but Lily's simple joy remained a constant anchor. After assuring himself that security remained vigilant and Gloria was comfortable continuing to help, Michael explained he had an important meeting with Eleanor. Business or pleasure? Gloria asked with raised eyebrows. Definitely business, Michael replied firmly. We may have identified who's behind the problems at Grand Tower. Gloria's expression sobered. Be careful, Michael. People who sabotage buildings aren't the type to surrender quietly when exposed. I know. He hugged Lily tightly. I'll be back this afternoon, sunshine. Be good for Mrs. Jenkins. I will tell Eleanor I'm using the special colored pencils she gave me to draw buildings like hers. Michael promised to relay the message, then headed downtown where Eleanor was waiting in her car. She had changed into what Michael had come to think of as her business armor, an impeccably tailored suit that projected authority and confidence. Lily's fine, he reported as he settled into the passenger seat, excited about planting flowers in the community garden. She wants you to know she's using the colored pencils you gave her. Eleanor's professional facade softened momentarily. I'm glad she likes them. She has a good eye for design. Like her father, Michael said with a small smile, deliberately echoing Eleanor's earlier comment about Lily's architect's eye. The drive to Westland Development's offices was tense but not uncomfortable. They were united by purpose, now their earlier trust issues resolved by shared concern for Lily and the mounting evidence against Richard and Jennifer. "What's our approach?" Michael asked as they neared the Westland building. "Direct confrontation," Eleanor replied. "We have evidence linking Jennifer's computer to the sabotage. Richard can either cooperate in the investigation or face criminal charges when we take this to the authorities. And if he denies everything, he will," Eleanor said confidently. "But his reaction will tell us how involved he actually is. Richard has a tell when he's genuinely surprised, a slight hesitation before responding, barely noticeable unless you've spent years observing him." "As you have," Michael noted. "8 years of marriage provided some insights, if not happiness," Eleanor confirmed dryly. Westland Development occupied a modern glass building on the opposite side of downtown from Palmer Holdings, as if Richard had deliberately positioned himself to face off against his ex-wife across the city skyline. The lobby featured aggressive modern art and uncomfortable-looking furniture, all angles and cold surfaces. The receptionist recognized Eleanor immediately, her eyes widening in surprise. "Ms. Palmer, Mr. Mills isn't expecting you." "He'll see me," Eleanor stated with calm authority. "Please inform him I'm here with evidence of criminal activity involving Westland Development." The receptionist's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the phone. After a hushed conversation, she directed them to the elevators. "Mr. Mills will see you in the conference room on 12. The conference room was clearly designed to intimidate floor-to-ceiling windows. Overlooked Palmer Holdings buildings, the furniture was oversized, and Richard's awards and accolades lined the walls. A power play in interior design. Richard kept them waiting for precisely 7 minutes, long enough to assert control without being overtly rude. When he finally entered, he was accompanied by a young woman Michael immediately recognized as Jennifer Davis from the company website photos they'd reviewed earlier. "Eleanor," Richard greeted with false warmth, "and I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met." He extended his hand to Michael. "Michael Turner," he replied, shaking Richard's hand with deliberate firmness. "I consult for Palmer Holdings." "Ah, a consultant." Richard's dismissive tone suggested he'd categorized and dismissed Michael in a single glance. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit, Eleanor?" Eleanor placed a folder on the conference table. "Evidence that someone using Jennifer's computer accessed Palmer Holdings systems to sabotage the Grand Tower project. Multiple incidents, Richard. Material substitutions, falsified inspection reports, and potentially the cable failure that nearly killed me." Richard's expression remained neutral, but Michael noted the slight pause Eleanor had described, a barely perceptible hesitation before he responded. "That's absurd," Richard said finally. "Jennifer has no access to Palmer Holdings systems. The evidence suggests otherwise." Eleanor pushed the folder toward him. IP address, the timestamps, digital signatures, all traceable to Jennifer's workstation. Jennifer, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. I've never accessed Palmer Holdings systems." "Perhaps not knowingly," Eleanor suggested, "but your computer certainly has. Which raises the question, who else uses your workstation?" "Jennifer." Richard's face darkened. "You're still doing this, Eleanor, blaming me for your company's problems." "I'm following evidence," Eleanor replied calmly. "Evidence that leads directly to this office." Michael watched the interaction closely. Richard seemed genuinely surprised by the specific accusations, but not by the general concept of sabotage, as if he'd expected something similar, but not this particular method. "If you have evidence of criminal activity, why come here?" Richard challenged. "Why not go directly to the authorities?" "Professional courtesy," Eleanor said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "One final opportunity to explain before this becomes a police matter." Richard laughed harshly. "Always the righteous one. Tell me, does your new consultant know about Jacksonville?" The name seemed to strike Eleanor like a physical blow. She stiffened, her composure momentarily faltering. "Jacksonville is irrelevant to this discussion," she said, her voice tight. "Is it?" Richard's smile turned predatory. "I wonder if Mr. Turner here knows what his employer is capable of when her back is against the wall." "Richard," Eleanor warned. "What's Jacksonville?" Michael asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "Ancient history," Eleanor insisted. "Not that ancient," Richard countered, "and certainly relevant to questions of sabotage and corporate ethics." Eleanor stood abruptly. We're done here. Expect to hear from the authorities. As they turned to leave, Richard called after them. Jennifer, show our guests out. And Eleanor, remember, everyone has secrets, even righteous crusaders like you. In the elevator, Michael studied Eleanor's tense profile. What's Jacksonville? Not now, she replied, her voice controlled but strained. Eleanor, I said not now, she repeated firmly. We need to process what just happened. Richard was surprised by the specific evidence, but not by the concept of sabotage. Michael recognized the deflection, but respected her boundaries. Meaning Jennifer might be involved without his direct knowledge. Or there's a third party we haven't identified. They exited the building in silence, Eleanor's thoughts clearly elsewhere. It wasn't until they were in her car that she spoke again. Jacksonville was my first major project after the divorce, she said quietly. A mixed-use development in Florida. During construction, a competing developer filed complaints about permitting irregularities. The project was delayed 4 months while we fought the accusations. Were they true? Michael asked carefully. Eleanor stared straight ahead. No, but disproving them nearly bankrupted the company. I was desperate to save the project to prove I could succeed without Richard. She paused. I hired investigators to dig into the competing developer's past. They found compromising information. I used it to pressure him to withdraw the complaints. Blackmailment, Michael stated, not as an accusation but a clarification. I prefer aggressive negotiation, Eleanor said with a bitter smile. But yes, essentially, not my proudest moment. Richard knows because he was still on the board then before the final split. Michael absorbed this information. We all make choices we regret when backed into corners. That doesn't make them right, Eleanor countered. No, Michael agreed, but it makes them human. Eleanor turned to him, genuine surprise in her eyes. You're not shocked, disgusted, by that you fought dirty when someone tried to destroy you. Michael shook his head. I was in the Navy, Eleanor. I've seen what people do under pressure. The question isn't whether you made a mistake, but what you learned from it. Eleanor was silent for a long moment. I learned that winning at any cost isn't winning at all. That's why the Riverside project is so important to me. It's not just a building, it's redemption. A chance to do things right. Before Michael could respond, Eleanor's phone rang. She answered, listening intently, her expression growing increasingly concerned. When she asked, Are you certain no secure the area? We're on our way. She ended the call, her face pale. That was Robert. There's been an incident at Grand Tower. A structural collapse on the 23rd floor. 2 workers injured. Serious, not life-threatening, but they've been taken to the hospital. The collapse happened in an area that was supposedly reinforced last week, one of the sections we identified as compromised. The sabotage continues, Michael realized. Yes, but this is different. This wasn't subtle manipulation of materials or specifications. This was direct tampering with existing structures. Eleanor started the car. We need to get to the site. As they drove toward Grand Tower, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Gloria. Call me immediately. Important. A sense of foreboding washed over him as he dialed Gloria's number. Michael. Gloria's voice was tight with worry. A man came to the apartment asking for you. Said he was from Grand Tower, that there had been an accident, and he was sent to bring you to the site. I told him you weren't home. He seemed off. When I asked for ID, he left quickly. Michael's blood ran cold. What did he look like? Tall, expensive suit, same build as the man from Lily's school from what I could tell. Michael, I'm worried. This doesn't feel right. Where's Lily now? With me. I kept her inside. Good. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in until I get there. Michael turned to Eleanor. Someone just came to my apartment, looking for me, claiming to be from Grand Tower. Same description as the man at Lily's school. Eleanor immediately changed direction, heading toward Riverside. The structural collapse was a diversion, she realized, to separate you from Lily. But why? Michael's mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. What does Lily have to do with any of this? Nothing, Eleanor said grimly. But she matters to you, and apparently you matter to someone else in this equation, someone who knows hurting Lily would hurt you most effectively. As they sped toward Riverside, Michael's phone buzzed again, an unknown number. He answered cautiously. Mr. Turner. A distorted voice greeted him. By now you've discovered our little diversion didn't work. Pity. We'd hoped to make this simpler. Who is this? Michael demanded. Someone with a proposition. Come to Grand Tower alone, the 30th floor east scaffolding. 1 hour. If Ms. Palmer accompanies you, or if you contact authorities, certain photographs of your daughter's school will be sent to less savory individuals. Do you understand? Perfectly, Michael replied, struggling to control his rage. Good. 1 hour, Mr. Turner. Don't disappoint us. The call ended. Michael relayed the conversation to Eleanor, whose knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. It's a trap, she said immediately. Obviously, Michael agreed. But I don't see that I have a choice. There's always a choice, Eleanor countered. We contact the police, increase security around Lily. And then what? Michael interrupted. Whoever this is has been systematically undermining Grand Tower for months. They've investigated Lily's school, tracked my movements, created elaborate diversions. These aren't amateurs, Eleanor. So your plan is to walk into an obvious trap. My plan is to protect my daughter, Michael said firmly, and to end this, one way or another. Eleanor was silent for a moment, then abruptly pulled the car to the side of the road. Not without preparation, she decided. We have 1 hour. That's enough time to ensure Lily's safety and develop a counter-strategy. What kind of counter-strategy? Eleanor's expression was fierce, determined. One that turns their trap against them. Richard isn't the only one who knows how to play dirty when necessary. As rain began to fall again, they sat in the parked car formulating a plan that would either end the threat or potentially cost them everything. Either way, the confrontation that had been building since the day Michael pulled Eleanor from her crushed car was finally at hand, and this time saving her might require sacrificing himself. Metal shrieked as rain lashed across the exposed beams of Grand Tower. Michael Turner stood rigid against the howling wind, his soaked work shirt clinging to his frame. 30 stories above Pittsburgh, the partially constructed skyscraper swayed slightly in the storm. 20 feet away, Richard Mills leveled a gun with practiced ease, the expensive suit he wore incongruous against the raw construction site. She trusted you. Richard's voice carried over the rain, a smile playing at his lips that didn't reach his eyes. But she doesn't know your secret, does she, Turner? About what really happened that night. Between them, Eleanor Palmer lay crumpled against a stack of building materials, blood from a gash on her forehead mixing with rainwater. Her designer suit was torn and muddied, but her eyes remained clear, focused on Michael with something between hope and betrayal. Michael glanced down at Eleanor, pain etching deep lines around his eyes. I can't save her twice. No, you can't, Richard agreed, especially when you're the reason she needs saving in the first place. Michael's jaw tightened. I had nothing to do with the sabotage. Maybe not directly, Richard conceded, but you noticed the substandard materials before the beam fell, didn't you? You saw something wrong and said nothing. Then you played the hero, pulling her from the wreckage you could have prevented. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. The accusation was new to her. I was going to report it, Michael said quietly. I didn't have time before the collapse. A convenient excuse, Richard scoffed. But it doesn't matter now. What matters is that you're both here and neither of you is leaving. Why, Richard? Eleanor asked, struggling to sit up despite her injuries. This elaborate scheme threatening a child, it's not just business anymore. It was never just business, Richard spat. You took everything from me, my company, my reputation. Do you know what it's like watching your legacy being dismantled by your ex-wife? So this is revenge, Michael concluded. Justice, Richard corrected. An opportunity. With Eleanor gone, Palmer Holdings falls into disarray. The board will need leadership. As the ex-husband who warned about safety concerns at Grand Tower, I'll be the natural choice to step in and save the company. You'd murder for corporate control. Eleanor's voice was incredulous. No one will call it murder, Richard said coldly. A tragic construction accident. The CEO and a worker victims of the same structural failure. Poetic, really. Michael's eyes darted to the scaffolding edge, calculating distances options. And Jennifer, what's her role in all this? Jennifer, Richard looked genuinely confused. What does she have to do with anything? Her computer was used to access Palmer Holdings systems, Eleanor explained, to authorize the material changes. Richard's expression shifted from confusion to realization. That wasn't my doing. Jennifer's computer is accessible to several people at Westland. Then who? Eleanor began, but was interrupted by a new voice from the shadows. That would be me. Robert Collins stepped onto the rain-slicked platform, a tablet computer in his hand. Surprise, Eleanor. Robert, Eleanor's shock was palpable. But why 15 years, Robert said simply. 15 years of watching you take credit for my work, my ideas. The Riverside concept, mine. The environmental integration systems at Parkview Tower, also mine. Yet you became the visionary, the brilliant architect CEO. We were a team, Eleanor protested. I never claimed sole credit. You never had to, Robert cut in bitterly. The world assumed it. Eleanor Palmer's revolutionary designs. Palmer's visionary urban concepts. My contributions footnotes at best. So you partnered with Richard, Michael realized. A mutually beneficial arrangement, Richard confirmed. Robert provides inside access and plausible technical errors. I provide financial backing and a convenient scapegoat in Jennifer. When Eleanor is gone, Robert gets the recognition he deserves as the new technical director under my leadership. And threatening Lily, Michael demanded, anger overtaking caution. How does that fit your justice narrative? An unfortunate necessity, Robert said dismissively. We needed you here isolated. Your daughter was never in actual danger. Enough talk, Richard interrupted, gesturing with the gun. The storm's getting worse. Time to conclude our business. Michael tensed, preparing to move. In the moment before chaos erupted, his eyes met Eleanor's. Despite her injured state, he saw clarity there and determination. Something passed between them, an unspoken coordination born of growing trust. A sudden gust of wind rocked the platform. In that instant, Michael lunged not at Richard, but at Robert, tackling him to the ground. The tablet skittered across the wet surface, disappearing over the edge. Richard fired the shot, going wide as Eleanor kicked at his legs from her position on the ground. Now, Eleanor shouted into what Michael now realized was a concealed communication device. Floodlights suddenly illuminated the platform from multiple angles. A police helicopter appeared above them, its spotlight adding to the brightness. Voices echoed through megaphones from the floors below. Richard Mills, Robert Collins, this is the Pittsburgh Police. Drop your weapon and remain where you are. The building is surrounded. Richard's face contorted with rage. He aimed the gun at Eleanor, finger tightening on the trigger. Michael didn't hesitate. He launched himself between them as the gun fired. A searing pain tore through his shoulder, but he managed to knock Richard off balance. The gun clattered to the platform as Richard staggered backward, teetering at the edge of the scaffolding. For a moment, Richard seemed suspended between safety and the 30-story drop. His eyes locked with Eleanor's hatred, giving way to something like fear. Then as Michael reached out instinctively to grab him, Richard lost his footing on the rain-slick surface. Eleanor screamed. Michael lunged forward, catching Richard's wrist at the last possible second. Pain exploded through his wounded shoulder as he strained to hold Richard's weight with one arm. Help me, Michael called to Robert, who stood frozen nearby. Robert hesitated, then moved forward, helping Michael pull Richard back to safety, just as police officers swarmed onto the platform. In the chaos that followed, Richard and Robert being handcuffed, paramedics attending to Eleanor, and Michael, the two found themselves side by side on gurneys awaiting transport to the hospital. You were wearing a wire, Michael observed. From the moment we left my penthouse, Eleanor confirmed. Caroline's idea. We couldn't risk them actually harming you, so we created a backup plan while making it appear you were coming alone. And the injury was that part of the plan too. Eleanor's expression softened. Hardly, though throwing yourself in front of a bullet was very you. Meaning selfless, instinctive, exactly what you did the day we met. She reached across the space between them, her hand finding his. Thank you, again. Michael winced as the paramedic secured his shoulder. Does this mean I get a reward this time? Despite the pain and exhaustion, Eleanor laughed, a genuine sound that cut through the chaos around them. What did you have in mind? Before he could answer, a familiar voice called his name. Michael turned to see Gloria hurrying toward them. Lily's small hand clasped firmly in hers. Daddy! Lily broke free, rushing to his side. You're hurt. Just a scratch, sunshine, Michael assured her, forcing a smile through the pain. Nothing to worry about. Ms. Palmer, too? Lily asked, noticing Eleanor's bandaged forehead. We had a little accident, Eleanor explained gently. But we're both going to be fine. Lily looked between them, her young face serious. Mrs. Jenkins says you were being heroes, like in my books. Gloria approached relief evident in her weathered features. When the police called to say you were both safe, I thought this little one would want to see for herself. Thank you, Gloria, Michael said sincerely. As the paramedics prepared to load them into separate ambulances, Lily suddenly grabbed both their hands. You have to stay together, she insisted. In my books, the heroes always stay together after the adventure. The paramedics exchanged glances, then shrugged. We can take them both in one if that works. Eleanor's eyes met Michael's over Lily's head. What do you think? Should the heroes stay together? In that moment, with rain still falling around them and the city lights blurring through the droplets, Michael felt something settle into place, a certainty he hadn't experienced since Lily was born. I think your daughter's right, he said softly. Heroes belong together. 6 months later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the renovated Riverside apartments took place on a perfect spring day. Residents gathered in the newly landscaped courtyard, admiring the transformation of their community. The original building had been respectfully updated, while 2 new floors featured the promised market-rate apartments, their modern glass facades harmonizing with the classic brick below. Michael stood to one side of the small podium, watching as Eleanor addressed the crowd. Her confidence remained, but the corporate armor had softened, replaced by genuine connection with the community she now considered part of her extended family. Riverside isn't just a building, she was saying. It's proof that development can serve people of all income levels while still making business sense. It's a model we're already replicating in 3 other neighborhoods. Gloria, seated in the front row, caught Michael's eye and gave him a knowing smile. She had been the first resident to move back in after the renovations. Her apartment now featuring the accessible bathroom design Michael had created, with grab bars that looked like modern art rather than medical equipment. Lily sat beside Gloria, proudly wearing a junior architect t-shirt that Robert's replacement at Palmer Holdings had created for her. The company's new technical director was a young woman with fresh ideas about community integration and sustainability, and no interest in taking sole credit for collaborative work. As for Robert and Richard, their trial was set for the fall. The evidence was overwhelming. Robert's detailed records of the sabotage Richard's financial transfers and the testimony of Jennifer Davis, who had turned state's witness when she discovered how she'd been used as a scapegoat. They faced charges ranging from attempted murder to criminal negligence and corporate fraud. Grand Tower's construction had resumed after a complete structural review. The redesigned project now incorporated community spaces and affordable office units for startups and nonprofits, Eleanor's way of ensuring the building served a broader purpose than just corporate profit. When the ceremony concluded and the residents moved to the refreshment tables, Eleanor joined Michael, slipping her hand into his. Well, what do you think? She asked, surveying the transformed community. I think it's everything we designed it to be, Michael replied, and more. The more remained unspoken but understood. Over the past 6 months, as Michael had recovered from his gunshot wound and Eleanor had navigated the corporate fallout from the scandal, their relationship had evolved from professional respect to friendship to something deeper. Neither felt the need to label. Michael had completed his architecture licensing, working part-time for Palmer Holdings while taking classes to finish his long-deferred degree. Eleanor had restructured her company's leadership, creating a more collaborative environment that valued input from all levels. Together, they were developing a series of mixed-income housing projects that combined Michael's human-centered design with Eleanor's business acumen. Lily bounded over a plate of cookies in hand. Daddy, Eleanor, I saved the best ones for you. Thank you, sunshine, Michael said, accepting the slightly squished cookie with appropriate solemnity. These look delicious, Eleanor agreed, taking one as well. Did you help Mrs. Rodriguez make them? Uh-huh. She showed me how to measure the flour just right. It's like building, but with food. As Lily ran back to join the other children playing in the new garden area, Eleanor leaned against Michael's uninjured shoulder. She's extraordinary, she said softly. She is, Michael agreed, and she adores you, you know. The feeling is mutual, but Eleanor hesitated. Michael, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Palmer Holdings is breaking ground on a new project next month, a community of townhomes near the university. The architect's unit will be ready first. She met his eyes. It has 3 bedrooms, a studio space for your designs, and a small yard, perfect for a growing family. Michael understood the unasked question. Are you suggesting we move in together? I'm suggesting home, Eleanor clarified. For all of us, if you're ready. Michael looked across the courtyard where Lily was now showing Gloria how the flowers they'd planted were beginning to bloom. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a chance rescue to criminal conspiracies to something neither of them had expected, to find partnership in every sense of the word. Home, he repeated, testing the word. I like the sound of that. Eleanor's smile rivaled the spring sunshine. So do I. From across the courtyard, Gloria watched them, satisfaction evident on her weathered face. Frank had always said you could judge people by how they treated those who couldn't do anything for them. By that measure, Eleanor Palmer had proven herself worthy of Michael and Lily. And Michael, well, he'd finally learned that independence didn't have to mean facing life alone. As the celebration continued around them, the future stretched before them, not as separate paths, but as a shared journey. Some rescues, it seemed, worked in both directions, and some foundations, once properly laid, could support something far more enduring than towers of steel and glass. They could support a family built from the ground up, stronger for having been broken, more beautiful for having been carefully reconstructed piece by meaningful piece.